Morning at 9 o'clock, I'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. Sitting on the panel today, to my left is Mr. Robert Upton. My name is Stu McPherson. I'll be chairing the hearing today. Representing the City of Winnipeg Assessment and Taxation Department is Mr. Roddy Pontanilla and Mr. Stephen Lobenstein. The secretary for today's hearing is Ms. Cara Belshaw. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application. We'll limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony. Anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Please be advised, comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council. It's independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they so wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave and the process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. Just as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We'll swear the parties in, please. If you do have a cell phone, please put that on silent.
Swear.
Please state your name.
Roddy Pontanilla.
Do you swear the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name.
Rocky Neufeld.
Do you affirm the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Neufeld. You're here representing the property owners for 8 properties today. I understand it's just the amount of assessed value we're dealing with in each case.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. So, Mr. Pontanilla, you may begin when you're ready for
Okay.
160 Provenche. Please ensure you read the file and roll number into the record.
I will. So the file number we have for the property in question is 19-612. This property is civic address 160 Provenche Boulevard. The roll number is 0606 002 5500. If I can refer you to page 8 of the brief I've handed in. I have some photo evidence for you guys. So the first few pictures are a map of the parcel, and then we have an overhead view of the same parcel. And on the following page, we have some Google Street View pictures that I pulled. And this would be from the May 2019 map update. So there we can see some pictures of the property in question. I can refer you back to page 2. We have a sale on the property. February 13th, 2013 for $975,000. We have 3 tenants currently listed in the property. On page 3, I have some rent comparables for you. They're all on Provenche Boulevard. There's a mix of first and second floor rents, and it just shows a range of the leasable rates that are currently being currently being applied on Provencher. If you look onto the next page, on page 4, we have an income stream for you, where we list all of the tenants, the rents that we have applied in each premise. We have a 4% vacancy loss on there, 2% expenses, it's $8 shortfall, which lands us a net operating income of $114,798. And we apply a cap rate of 7.3%, which brings us a estimated value of $1,573,000. If you refer to page 6, we have a table with some capitalization rates, and it does show some various property types. Since we're speaking about the retail properties, I'd refer you to the retail section there. And looking at the city of our own table as well as others, our cap rate does seem to be within the space of acceptable parameters that are shown. And that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, questions for the assessor?
Yes, page 4 and 5. Is the valuation of this property all done by the model?
It hasn't.
And there were no manual changes to this?
As far as I'm aware, there weren't any in the 2020 assessment, no.
And did you have an opportunity to inspect
I did.
the interior?
Yep, I went and inspected.
Okay. And so of these premises that you have, are the ones with the higher rents the first, no, how does this work for the floors? Maybe I should put words in your mouth. Can you tell me what floor each of them is on?
I believe the premise 40, 82, and 33, 228 are the first floor premises, and then the second floor premises are 4085, 283, 279, and 283, 280.
Okay. So I'm just a little curious then why premise 283-280 is at a higher rental rate than the other second floor premises, especially considering it's larger.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know what, I had gone there, and I believe at the time, based on the looking of the premise, we had concluded that the income quality parameter that we had placed on the premise was fair for the finish that's on there.
So someone inputted a premise quality.
It would have been beforehand. Before I was just going to review what was on the model, what was already in place.
So then that's your answer, is that someone has a higher premise quality.
At some stage in the history of the assessment of the property, that's right.
And at the time of inspection, how many of these units were vacant?
At the time of the inspection, from my understanding, none of the units were vacant.
Well,
So-
you said there was 3 tenants.
Yep, so we have, on the first floor, we have 2 retail spaces.
Well, no, but you have 6 listed here.
Right. So some of the spaces, I believe, are for one area, but it's just the way it was divided up. It ended up being into different premises. Perhaps at one point it would have been used as a premise, and it hasn't been updated in the records.
Well, if you just had 3 premises with the same amount of square feet, wouldn't your rent numbers be lower because you use an economy of scale?
That could be the question, or that could be, yep.
Page 10 is the, and 12, 13, is this the mailer that was submitted by the owner?
This was the mailer that was in our system, so I pulled it, and it does show the address is 160 Provencher, and the due date is concurrent with all the other 2017 mailers.
Has it been altered?
I haven't altered anything on it, no. This is what would have been in the system that I would have then just put into the brief.
And did you have an opportunity to compare this statement to the workup on page 4 and 5? So it's a fairly significant change, a difference, isn't there?
From my understanding of it, this was model driven, that is from where our income stream comes from, so I'm assuming that this would have been factored into the equation when it was during the time of the assessment cycle, when we're taking in the mailer information and then applying it to the model.
No, but it is different, and I'm just wondering if you compared it at all. Did you look at it?
I didn't take a look at it, no.
The comparables, page 3, then, none of them are from this building, are they?
No, sir, they're all from various retail spaces on Provencher. And I have a spread of some first and second floor rents, just to show us
And you've got
range.
some fairly old rents in here, too.
There are some that are a little bit older, but I feel they're reflective of current market value. I mean,
So a month-to-month rent written in 2003.
they're still in the space. I mean, that's what the rents that they're pulling.
Okay. Oh, so that's a move-in date then, if it's a month-to-month, then, not a lease start.
I would believe so. It's this is the information that was on the mailer, so I'm just
Okay.
going by what I saw there.
Do you know anything about Boulevard Provencher zoning overlay?
I'm not familiar with any of that, sir, sorry.
Did you have an opportunity to review the non-recoverable costs for the subject?
We did do a general overview with a fellow assessor in the office. We took a look at the numbers, and I believe that we were of the conclusion that that our income stream parameters seem to be concurrent with the data that we were working with.
No, but I meant for the subject specifically, there are a fair amount of non-recoverable, and they mark here that it's semi-gross leases, and I just was wondering if you looked at this specific information and to compare against your lack of non-recoverables in the one that you produced for this assessment.
You know, I can't really, I'm unaware if I can't really speak to that at the moment. I know we took a look at the mailer, and we did look at some of the, we did look at the evidence that was presented, but I don't want to speak to something that I'm not 100%.
Right, and that's a bit of I'm just gonna ask the chairperson for kind of some guidance here. Obviously, we want to introduce some rebuttal information, and if the assessor is not familiar with the process, I know he's new to it, I like to lead that in through way of questioning, but if he can't answer the question,
Well, I think he has answered the question
that can allows me to lead
that
in.
would allow you to.
Okay, that's fine then. Pages, so just for the record, pages 17, 18, and 19, do you know anything about this information that you would be able to answer questions on?
On the cap rates studies that are.
The cap rates and the management or the non-recoverable expenses?
I have a general overview. It's not the strongest, I would say, so if you want to look for some really technical, to dive into the methodology behind it, I wouldn't feel comfortable answering some of
Okay,
those
I
questions.
mean, that's fair, but as long as it doesn't, okay, those are my questions, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Upton?
Yes, in your page 2, you show 3 leases,
Yes, sir.
and that's as reported by the owner,
Yep,
and that totals about 5,000 square feet.
it does.
And you got 9,000, you got leasable area of 9,800 square feet. Does that indicate the balance is vacant?
It's actually not vacant at the moment. From my understanding of it, there is a tenant who is the owner of the building, and he's occupying a space
Okay.
in one of the premises that we have listed. It's listed as, we don't have it listed as vacant, we have it listed as a tenant who's in the space currently, but the mailer shows it as vacant.
Okay, so you,
So it's
Did you
essentially
inspect
the
the
owner.
building? Did you
I
inspect
did inspect the building,
Was
yeah,
it
and
vacant when
no,
you-
they are in the top on the second floor.
Okay, so the building is totally 100% occupied?
From my understanding of it, it currently is. From what I could see, I couldn't access one of the premises, but you can see on the outside that it's fit up and that it looks to be active and to be used. And the owner who was giving us a tour of the building did point out that I believe it's being used as a law office. And so they weren't there at the time, so that's why they couldn't give us access to the premise, but you can see that they are in the space, so.
Okay. And you're, on page 4, you've got rent shown for each of the spaces?
That's right.
And where do those rents come from?
These are model driven.
Those are strictly model?
Yeah, they're model driven.
Okay, very good. And do you have an overall blended rate for the building?
No, I believe each rate is just being shown with its own premise and it gets factored into the total of the
Okay,
potential rent.
You didn't calculate an overall rate?
No.
then? Okay. Very good. And your cap rate of 7.3, you call it the neighborhood shopping center, right?
I believe that's the current zoning of it, yep, or the current,
And on your page 6, your neighborhood shopping center by City of Winnipeg is
7.15 and 7.3, between the 20th and 80th percentile.
7.3, and you applied.
And ours is 7.4.
7.3 in this case you applied.
Oh, sorry, 7.3, that's right. Yeah, so right at the high end of the cap rate there.
Do you know anything about the sale?
From my understanding of it, it was from some of the data that we could come up with, it was a arm's length, it appears to be an arm's length sale, and it was listed by an agent or a real estate company. So it was listed, it appears to be listed by an agent, it was on the market, and appears to be an arm's length sale. So it seems to be a good indicator of market value.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a two-story building. Is there an elevator in this building?
When I went into the building, I remember seeing just stairs. There was a flight of stairs that went up onto the second floor.
Okay, and your comparables on page 3, you said some of these are second story?
That's right.
Which ones are the second stories?
So the second comparable for $14, that's actually on a third. That's on the third floor. And the bottom comparable, 201, that's on the second floor.
And are those buildings, do those have elevators?
That's a good question, I'm unaware. Yeah, no, there's-
The leases that you've got, I guess, seem to correspond with 3 of the premises that you have?
That's correct.
Like the 2465 could be, I don't know, the 2265 perhaps. 2602 could be the 2619, and the 652 is probably the 652. Is that correct?
That would appear to be correct.
So is the entire second floor then, is that the owner-occupied law offices?
It's one wing. So when you go into the building, you have on I believe that'd be the western side of the building. On the second floor, that's where it appears to be the law office. And then there's a hallway in the center, which is common area, but at the same time, there's a space to another tenant in the center. And then there would be on the east side of the building. On the second floor, that whole side of the building, that appears to be the tenant who is also the owner of the building. So he was the one that gave us the tour and allowed us to look in the different premises that were in the building, and he has that second floor.
And just for clarification, you said that the second floor units were 408, premise 4085, 283279, and 283280? Correct?
I believe so.
So then that would mean the other 3 are all main floor. Correct?
There's 2 on the main floor, there should be actually be 3 on the second floor.
Yeah,
So there's 2 on the main floor and then 3 tenants on the second floor.
but you've got 6 premises though.
Yeah, one of the spaces, you know, from my understanding, this is, I don't wanna say anything that I'm not 100% behind, so as far as I could see, it would have appeared to have been one of the premises that used to be used as 2 units, had then been readjusted into one bigger unit. That's just from my understanding of it.
Okay. And when that occurs, do you combine the
It
premises?
should have been combined, so
And that would change the rental rate that's
Potentially.
applied to it?
potentially it could.
Okay. And your cap rate of 7.3%, what are the factors that are involved in establishing that cap rate?
From my understanding, it was a model-driven cap rate. So during a certain time of the year, when the assessment department takes in all of the mailer data, it gets compiled into the model, and then the model, using the parameters in place, comes up with a cap rate that it feels is appropriate for the property type.
Okay, I thank you. Mr. Neufeld, you got some rebuttal evidence?
And it's fresh again. Worked on it all morning. And I did get extra copies. I don't know many. I expect that because there'll be 2 assessors, that they could feel okay to both ask questions, I imagine, when they have a turn.
Right. This is rebuttal evidence, it's going to apply to all the properties on the
That's
docket
correct.
today?
Yeah, But I got another one here. What the heck is this? Okay. Yeah, wait, yeah, here. Well, give me one. I got my 2 now.
Okay.
So there's spares.
Yep.
You got a spare for Stephen, you can start reading up on it.
It's a good reading.
Oh, that's really good stuff in there. No, he can't have any.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Some of this material has been shown, so I'll be very quick on that. I'm referring to management fees or non-recoverables, as well as capitalization rate information. Now, some of the new information that I put in this morning came from other people's work, namely the assessment department. I did spend some time yesterday. I want to make sure I'm clear on this, because we're going to have an issue later today. I was reading the Manitoba Evidence Act. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but what I did read in there was that if something's been entered already into a board, then there's no prohibition against using it for another occasion, because it has been entered as evidence. The difference becomes if it was entered willingly or not. Later today, you're going to hear about something that's not willing. But any information I presented was willingly entered, so hopefully I'm within the rules, and if not, I'm sure I'll get told. So the blue one is, this is a broker's statement, and this is a Collier's broker's statement where we indicate when we tell our owners what their net income is going to be, we take off 7% for costs, which is the same as the old costs, the management and the other. There was some continuity there. There's an article, pages 2 and 3. This is from the Appraisal Institute. Now, that's the U.S. Appraisal Institute. It's in the journal, the Appraisal Journal. And this is the best article I've seen in explaining it. The reason, need for putting in the appropriate costs. Page 4 are the IAAO standards, which indicate that you should look at the actual costs to determine your model, which is why we keep looking at the actual costs in the properties we've been through. Page 5 was an excerpt from evidence presented to the municipal board, and in it explains non-recoverable operating expenses, what they're for. And in this case, then the next one, pages 6, 7, and 8, are from an appraisal entered to the municipal board by the assessment department in which this information is also given. And this is just to explain the procedure on a site-specific basis. And you'll see from the reading of it that it does not disagree with what I'm presenting you in terms of calculating the actual shortfall in this case, management expenses, and how they're applied, and other expenses which this category would typically include structural repair allowances. That's the 2%. Nothing has changed in valuation since it was codified the turn of the last century. So Winnipeg city is on their own. Now, here we get into some brand new information. There are some municipal board cases that have been cited to this board on cases involving specifically 2184 and 2188 McPhillips. Now, I'm going to be very clear in my statement here so that people understand, and the people who are going to be viewing this or are viewing this understand. Page 9 and 10 are excerpts from each of these appraisals. They were written by Stevenson Advisors. In it, the last statement, as stated above, no actual financial statements were available for review. It says it right in the appraisal that was submitted to the board. Now the board on page 11, you'll notice that when the city likes to quote these orders, their own lawyer said, "You've made a mistake in the order." So that has never been brought to the board's attention. And the person who wrote the appraisals on page 9 and 10 has retracted them. And I have that person's affidavit. Now, a very cowardly person or persons filed a complaint against me at the Appraisal Institute of Canada saying that I knowingly lied to this board on that particular statement. So I'm going to repeat it again. The person who wrote this has retracted it, and I have that person's affidavit. Make sure it's clear what I said. Page 12 and 13 are from the provincial assessor. Authority for assessment in Manitoba, in Canada, is a provincial authority. The city is playing second. They are operating under authority given to them by the province. Technically, the provincial municipal assessor has more authority than the city assessor. The provincial municipal assessor applies, as you can see, a management fee of 5% and a replacement reserve of 2%. That's on page 13, and they continue to do so. So the city is acting on their own. The capitalization rate information, I know the assessor hasn't heard this, but the board has seen this information already, and it goes to describe method of sales verification, which sales should be used and shouldn't be used. Page 3, the table examples, 5 of them have restrictions by the person who supplied them saying do not use these as cap rates, because we know there's something wrong with them as a cap rate. The city went ahead and used them. They're detailed. Their portfolio sales, the IAA says don't use them. There's government involvement. The IAAO says do not use government's data, where the government was part of the revenue structure. And there are several examples that they weren't even cap rate sales. Pictures showed one was an owner-occupied merger, and the other was vacated. There was on page 4, the one on Watt Street was vacated. There's no cap there. And 1100 Waverly, which is classified wrong. Now today you're going to hear later about it industrial. It's not even industrial. It's retail warehouse. It's retail office. And they have the tenant listing. Another thing I will refer to is page 7. These are definitions of market value, and there are 3 different ones here from different sources that were all put in the Appraisal Institute's document. And The word I'll be bringing up is creative financing, sales concessions don't belong in our numbers. So the last couple of pages are the income and expense cover sheets, and in red, I've circled the ones where we've asked the assessor not to rely on these, for very good reason. One of these is 1100 Waverly. No one in their right mind would ever use that as a cap rate, because it was a building that was vacated and was being reabsorbed into the market. And it was done on a 10-year DCF, where the income comes to fruition between years 10 and 20. But we know that. That's why we told them not to use it. We told them not to use Roblin and Portage for the 3166 for the same reason, because it was on the same basis. Thank you, that's my
Rebuttal. Mr. Bonilla, do you have questions regarding the information that was just presented?
I do
Not
have
on the
a
brief yet, but on.
Oh, just something there, Bill? I have no
Just-
question about it.
Mr. Upton,
No, none for me, thank you.
I have a question. Your first page, you said this shows that you take off 7%?
Yes, this is,
How does that show that?
oh, the top row. You'll see that there are columns that have all been deleted, because I'm not gonna provide numbers, but there's a column, as you read over, there's net rent, there's allowances, landlord's work, free rent, and then at the end, there's another 7% discount. So, if, for example, the first line had said net rent was $10, the landlord would have it reported to him as $9.30. Because,
And what's the purpose of that?
so that the landlord knows how much money he's making. He knows that 7% is going to come off the top for non-recoverables. Don't count on your money. Like, your net doesn't mean net, and it leads to the net operating income. So this is a broker's way of stating that. It's the same thing we do as appraisers.
And page 5, it was filed at the municipal board,
That's correct.
115 Gary, which cycle was this?
2014, filed in June, though, of 19. When the city was aware what they were going to do with their rates, and again, there's nothing at all to indicate that the world has changed the way they value properties. If you're making a policy change, you're making a policy change.
Okay, thank you. We'll hear your presentation now, please.
Thank you. So this property was purchased as potential investment, potential owner usage, and it has had a vacancy problem. When you look at the rent rolls, you can see that it is finally absorbed at this point in time. For the reporting period, they did state 19% vacancy. To reconstruct the statement, what we did is we went through the rent roll information and calculated the actual net rents. All the rents are listed as semi-gross, and they are on my page 4, which appears to be the same as the assessor's statement, that I'll rely on mine. The top one, for example, is $17 gross, and we've adjusted it to $11 net by looking at the costs, and which are almost exactly $6, and that's the same for all the rest of them. So number 2 is $10 gross, which we've adjusted to $4 net. So these are all actuals. Now, the last space marked vacant, that's an owner-occupied space, and being on the upper level, we're using applying the $4 rate, which is the same as the other second floor rents. So the two rents that are on the lower level are the ones that are at $11 and $12.50, and then the upper ones are all at $4. For vacancy, even though at this point in time it's full, some risk has to be given, and we looked at the history. I've handled this property for 6 years now, and this is the first time it's actually been full. And when in the first year, we had one whole floor vacant. Following year was, sorry, I just want to get my notes here, it was 25% vacant, and now, for the reporting period, 19%. So we are applying 10, and the way we looked at that was we looked at their claim, and you can see in the statement that midway through the year, they did fill it up. The other market indicators are, and they're misstated here, so I'm not gonna change the numbers on you, but we took these from the Johnson report, and the numbers we had looked at, this is a mix of retail and office, so the miscellaneous office vacancy is 7.6%. The retail vacancy is 6.5%. And we do have another number for retail St. Boniface, but we never put it in there. So the St. Boniface one varies, is slightly lower. I have 2.7 on one report for one style, that's on strips. This isn't a strip. We ended up looking at all those factors and applying, I guess the math of the person who did this up was just very 10.3, because that was the average of them. But it would be a high vacancy. So that was applied. The non-recoverables were calculated from the statement of expenses, and the only comment I have on that is with a gross rent, the non-recoverables have already been dealt with because I've taken them off the rent, so I don't think that should be put in here. Not because I'm agreeing with the city, but we're dealing with gross rent. So it would just adjust my NOI upwards by $34.19 because it has been accounted for. And I don't, the reason the shortfall number is $747 and not the $6 as claimed by the owner, I believe has to do with some separate metering. Because we replaced the utilities number with a figure of $2.35 a square foot, which is taken from the business tax, which is a good average. It's often the case when you have some separate metering. So my NOI is upwards to 58,362. Capitalization rates, starting with the Collier's report, page 25, we have different retails ranging from 6.5 to 8, and suburban office 7.5 to 8.25. So those are the figures we're working with. We put it at the higher end of the scale. It likely wouldn't fit into our model because it's inferior, and that's one way of accounting for it, is putting it at the upper end of the range. We also have some examples of different ones on pages 35 and 36. I couldn't tell you that there was one perfect example here. The closest to this in composition is an older sale on 819 Sargent at 10.8%, but that one was impacted by a bad location, so it wouldn't be that drastic. Some of the issues that the property faces, the way it was designed and laid out was that it was built, it's an old-fashioned style. Second floor above retail is not renting in the market. That's the biggest detraction. You have to pick one or the other. A Boulevard Provencher overlay was something that began to be enforced by a bylaw and planning beginning about 10 years ago. and they've been keeping it up on it. And what they're doing is on page 2, there's an overhead picture of it. What owners were doing is they were buying the house behind their building and using it for accessory parking. And that was forcibly stopped. They actually made all those off Provencher parking lots, closed them up. And the owner would say, well, it's accessory, it butts my site, it's separated by a back lane, but they still made them, they were all closed up. So a lot of properties became parking deficient as a result. And if you note on the subject itself, there's a little bit of parking at the rear, and otherwise, they're having to do with street parking. So that is a negative in the marketplace. If you've ever been out there, it's street parking is all you have to go on. Other than negative factors. So that's why we capped it at 8.25, which gets us a value of 707,418, rounded to 707,000. Dramatically different than what the assessor has, lower than the sale price, and the owner had a fair amount of personal motivation on the purchase. It had lingered on the market for quite some time. It was LaBelle's, and he ended up purchasing it because he had an idea that he would be able to use it, and make money on it. His idea proved to be did not happen. I don't know, you can't say, well, he paid too much, you can't penalize him for making a mistake. Last year's assessment is under appeal to the municipal board. There was no change in the value. One of the issues was there's been some problems with the penalty. Which makes it very difficult to deal with the value. And that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Putnam, any other questions for the applicant?
Just one question. I believe Mr. Neufeld might have spoken to it, but I just wanted to just get a little clarification. When I was taking a look at his brief, I was looking at the front page and I noticed that he had listed his expenses as $6 per square foot.
Yes, that's what we had listed.
And then at the bottom of the page, you have $7.47 per square foot. So I know you mentioned, you spoke to it for a second, but just for some clarification, how come those numbers are different again?
Separate metering, like those are the expenses he's carrying. So there are some items that are separately metered, and they don't. And as repair and maintenance, we put in $2 a foot, even if you don't spend it. And I notice here that their maintenance repairs, let's see, 17.8. Oh, they're pretty close to $2 a foot. So, yes, I would attribute it to utilities. Oh, sorry. Yes, that was the answer to your question. Something I said earlier, I just realized.
Okay.
Nothing further?
That seems to be everything, yeah, thanks.
Mr. Upton?
Okay. Yeah, the rents shown then are semi-gross, and you calculated them down to a net rent.
That's correct.
So, how did you arrive at that $4, for example, on those?
Well,
How did you get a net rent out of the,
okay.
how did you take out of the gross?
$6, and so if you take any of these comparables, let's just take one of the $4 ones, which is on page 4, the second line. So $543 rent times 12 divided by 652 is $10.
Mm-hmm.
Then go to page 3, expenses of 59,157 divided by 98.48 is $6.
Okay.
10 minus 6 is 4.
I see. Okay. And the vacancy, you said the building was vacant for half of the applicable year here?
Well, when first purchased, LaBelle's had moved out, and, and it was vacant. I have an email dated July 2015. 4 of the 6 units had been vacant since 2013. So that was 2 continuous years of vacancy
But it was full in the
following the purchase.
2017, it was full.
It appears that mid-2017, it filled up, when you count the owner space, yes. And there's been only 1 tenant since 2013 until 2015. And that was the owner themselves, who had purchased it for their own business.
Okay, in the structural reserve here, that's a small number, but
Well, we use, on the basis of structural repair, we try to match it to the building type, so, excuse me, this is a small retail, so the biggest reserve you'd wanna do is for eventual roof replacement, so the roof had being roughly 5,000 square feet, if you budget $20 a square foot, at some point in time, you're going to have to spend $10,000 to $12,000 on roof repair, and so we express that as a rate per square foot that you put away for doing that.
okay, thank you.
Your shortfall, 747, looks like your R&M is $2 used.
Yes.
Utilities, 235, that was based on,
Well, the costs add up to $6. Now, yeah, I'm gonna, I mean, let's see. So the actual utilities are $1.30, and so we have adjusted those to $2.35. That's one of the changes, just because my belief is there's some separate metering.
okay, and you say these are semi-gross and you've adjusted them by $6 expenses. If they were true gross, what, you would have adjusted them by the 747, is that? Is that the difference between gross and
Yeah,
semi-gross?
well, no, yeah, because if with the semi-gross, if you have some separate metering, the landlord doesn't get the bill, but in a shortfall situation, he's getting the bill. And that way you have to bring it into the shortfall.
And I think we've covered everything else. The structural reserve is primarily for the roof, is that correct?
Primarily for the roof, yes. That's the general, there is, and I just found out about this, well, actually, I've known about this for years. There's a building down the street that's having structural repairs, and he reported that there's a silt issue in the soil. So we haven't seen evidence on this property, though.
Okay, I thank you. Desire for summation?
I believe that from my inspection of the building, my market evidence would show that we have the leases, the rates that we have on do seem to be in line with the market data that's being shown. I would point to the sale in 2013 as a good indicator of market value, and I believe that would be my summation then.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, summation?
The purchase was for the owner's own use for a portion of it, along with the desire to have some income in the rest of the building, which would have helped. The owner's wife and her parents were involved with it, and subsequent to that, they have had years of poor performance. And the reason they're full now is the rents, the equilibrium. When you drop your rents to the point where you can fill your place up, you've proven that the market is working in this direction. So everything that's happened in the building is market. But the only thing I could see some criticism on the report was, do we use a vacancy to deal with the historical problem, or has it been corrected by the equilibrium in the rents? So I would put that to the board's discretion to consider that is the sole consideration they would have. Have the low rents corrected the vacancy problem? Otherwise, it's underperforming, and it was a serious investment error. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe?
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Green, do you affirm the evidence you present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I'll give these, I just want to double check something.
Yeah, for sure.
And that one's
When you're
fine.
ready.
Because, I mean, I'm not going to debate it here, but if
You might just want it confirmed.
maybe, but I just want to check one thing, because I
For sure.
remember there was a tenant here, and this one is already partially exempt. I just want to make sure that I'll do it.
Okay, we can get to it.
Morning, Mr. Lovenstein. You're going to take us through the rest of the docket. So we'll begin with 100 Patland Road when you're ready.
The file number is 19-613. The roll number is 060531057000. 100 Packman Road. The reference date's April 1st, 2018, and the assessed value is $8,990,000. The actual year and the effective year built are 1997. The wall height's 24 feet. The zoning is M2. The land area is 384,801 square feet. The gross floor and the leasable area are 133,221 square feet for a land to plan of 3.15. If we turn to page, excuse me. If we turn to page 8, we can take a look at where the property is located. It's in the St. Boniface Industrial Park on Packman. This is off Dougal Road, and it's parallels Plessis Road. At the bottom of page 8, you can see a street view of the property. Turning to page 9, you get a couple overhead looks. You can see where the trucks pull in and into the overhead doors and where they pull out for this facility. You can see it's two-story office space as well at the front of the building. Page 10 just has a few more views where you can get another idea of how the property is orientated. Turning to page 3, you can see the rent comparables. The rent comparables are on Kernahan, Border, Mission, McLeod, and Fife. They're dotted all over the city due to the size of this property. Rent comparables for this size are usually more scarce, so you have to go outside the area to find them. The rent range for these properties start at $4.43 and go up to $8.15. The effective years built ranges from 1965 all the way up to 1979, and the leased areas range from 35,760 square feet all the way up to 134,664 square feet. The lease terms range from 1 year, 3 months, all the way up to 10 years, 5 months, and the lease starts range from 2013 all the way up to 2017. So when you turn to page 4, you can see the income workup. It's broken down into areas of 70,000, 17,200, or 2,842,000, 10,000, 970,000, 32,000, 408,000 square feet. We're using a blended rate of $4.68 per square foot to get our potential rent of $624,624. We're applying a vacancy loss of 2.5% and expenses of 2%. We feel the expenses of 2% is adequate for these industrial properties. Turning to page Turning to page 14, you can see the non-recoverable expense sampling, which we have presented many times before. This generally lays out why we feel 2% is adequate for this property. For net, so now we're applying, this takes us to a net operating income of $584,339. We're applying a capitalization rate of 6.5% to get an estimated value of $8,990,000. So turning to page 6, you can see our capitalization rate chart. The second chart down is the industrial, so this falls on the lower end of the 20th to the 80th percentile. Also, turning to page 13, you can see our capitalization rate evidence we've supplied. The bottom chart is the industrial cap rates. These are not used for necessary comparisons. We're just showing that in the market, these cap rates do exist for industrial properties. So turning to page 7, or sorry, just turn to page 15, you can get, there's a Cushman Wakefield advertisement online for it. They're offering gross rents of $13 as a 2016 base year, as you can see. Page 16, they just have some overhead views in the area, and then page 17, you can get a look at the office space that they are marketing to the market at the moment. Page 18 just has a quick look at the office area that they're trying to, and 19, the first floor and the second floor, to get an idea of what the actual layout of the building is. And then on page 20, they also have a lease rate for the manufacturing warehouse space at $7.25. This is from 2015. So you get an idea, and then page 21, there's some interior pictures, so you can get an idea of what this building is trying to generate for an income. There was also a sale on this property, and this was in the evidence of Mr. Neufeld, which I came across while looking at the brief. He has it on page 35. He states it as a sale in spring of 2014 for $7.6 million at 100 Packman Road. It would be 1, 2, 3, 4. It would be the fifth chart, or fifth line from the
Which
top.
page are you looking at here?
It's on Mr. Neufeld's brief. It came across when I was looking over his evidence on page 35.
35.
Yeah. Yeah, so anyways, we feel that the value for the 2020 roll year at $8,990,000 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Neufeld, rebuttal first? You've entered it, but I just wondered, did
right.
you want to touch base on anything else? Or did you want to do some questions first and then you present your rebuttal?
Yeah, I'll just ask a few questions and, maybe I can refer to it if there's anything different. The workup is on page 4. Is this all done by the model?
Yeah, all modeled.
I'm curious, have you been out to the site?
I have not.
So there's 2 buildings, right?
Yep.
And one of the buildings is office use and the other is manufacturing? Or are you aware of that?
Well, from just viewing of the pictures, it looks like there is an office portion which is part of the manufacturing building, and then there is a second building on the
Right.
on the location that has probably some office in it and also has overhead doors and trucks backed into it, so I believe it would be used for industrial uses as well.
So, doesn't your department usually run 2 revenue streams for that?
No, because this is considered a industrial property, so.
There's actually 2 buildings.
Yeah, that's fine.
You don't even have to split a building up.
No.
I'm not saying you should,
No.
I'm just wondering why you didn't.
No, we didn't, well, I think initially this was all tenanted by one company, I believe, so.
Right.
We have split up the premises since then, but no, I don't believe that is necessary to have 2.
You have 2 premise IDs, the 2 at the lower part. Do you have tenants listed for those?
At the lower part?
Yeah, the 17,000 feet and 70,000 feet.
Well, I don't have them here listed, no, so.
You've been in, but you haven't been in the building?
No.
You're not aware that this is one large open area?
No, I'm not
Of
aware.
87,000 feet?
No, I haven't been in the building.
And there's a yellow line on the floor
No.
that separates them?
Again, I haven't been in the building, so.
Okay. Had they been valued together as one continuous space of 87,000 feet, would your model rent be different?
Or 87, yeah, economies of scale do come into play with the model rent.
And you also mentioned that the reason you didn't do, one of the thoughts why there was no multiple revenue stream is because it was originally a single tenant building. So then why not put all 133,000 under one revenue stream and work it out that way then?
I think we can look at the mailer, and they do have some tenants in there, so they themselves are breaking it up, which is interesting. And then also, even with their advertisements, they seem to be breaking it up.
Okay, so they're breaking it up, but,
Yeah.
but I'm asking, how come you haven't been consistent? Like, I mean, I'm not trying to pick on you, but I normally see you running 2 revenue streams. Now you're saying, well, they've broken it up, but the last time you said it used to all be together, so which one is it?
I rarely see us run 2 revenue streams.
Okay.
I'm gonna beat that to death, I just,
I was just trying to, the expenses that they have claimed are, sorry, I don't have them handy, page 11. From looking at the $491,000 of listed expenses, is it safe to say that there are some non-recoverables in there?
Sure. They don't list any, they don't list any recoverables.
Well, they don't list any
They don't
recoverables.
list,
and
yeah, so it's.
You allocated $12,000 for non-recoverables out of a claim of $490,000. Probably, now, just going by the standard here, the IAAO standard, aren't you supposed to consider actual expenses when you create your model? Would this property have gone into the
And we
creation
do,
of the
and
model?
I think that's kind of the point, is that we get all the income and expense mailers for all the properties in the city, so when we compile our data, which we do, 2% came out to be an adequate expense.
Okay, well, let's just bear in mind as we work through the day that this is significantly higher than 2%, is it not?
Well, we don't know because there are no recoverables.
Has this statement here, page 11, to, I guess it's pages 11 and 12, has it been altered?
Nope, this would be how it was sent to the city of Winnipeg.
Now, you're allowing an expense allowance of 2.5%. Your evidence on page 15 indicates that they actually have 17,000 available, which is roughly 13%. You didn't use that then?
No.
Well, you have this flyer listed, inserted here. What was the reason for it? Thought you were talking about an asking gross rate?
Yeah, for the office, they have a gross rate of
So
$13.
a gross rent, a rent is a market indicator, correct?
That is an asking gross rent, yeah.
It's a market indicator?
Sure.
And vacancy is also a market indicator?
Yeah.
So let's get back to my other question. How can you use just one part of it and not the other part?
One part of what?
You're using one part of this to try and find some support for your rents, but you're not using the other part to show that your vacancy is wrong.
Well, our vacancy's not wrong, we're using a model vacancy.
You're supporting, well, okay, I think you see my point. You brought up the sale. Now, are you telling me that putting the sale, here you've got this sale from 2010 that's listed.
Yeah?
Now, you mentioned that there was another sale. Was your sole source of that information from my report?
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, I found it.
Do you know anything about either of the sales?
No, I'm just speaking towards the sale that you have in your.
Okay. Do you know who Phillips Temro is?
No,
Do you know anything about their history?
I do not.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Upton?
Yeah, okay, you've got 87,000 square feet of warehouse space?
87,000 square feet, we haven't broken.
17 and 17?
Okay,
Is
yeah,
that the warehouse?
I believe that is, yeah.
And the balance then, 45 or whatever it is office, is it?
Yeah, well, and then the other building would be 32,000 or 408.
Yeah, you've got,
Yeah.
the 32,408 is office?
No,
What's it?
that would be the second building on the site. So if you look at page.
I'm confused, I thought one was office and one building was office.
No, the office is just in the front of this building here.
I see, okay.
Main area, and this is the second.
So the office is 10,000 plus 2,000, it's 13,000 square feet or
I
whatever.
believe that's correct.
That's office, eh? And all the balance is warehouse. And the office and warehouse, you got the same rents for both?
Yeah, we're not
You have the
applying,
same range for both?
we're not applying office rents, even though these are being advertised as office leases, so.
Okay, so these are really warehouse rents?
These are warehouse rents, these are warehouse model rents that we are applying. yes.
Warehouse model rents, that's it. If you were office rents, they would be higher?
Office rents, well, they're advertising $13 gross though, so I don't know how to break down, but we know office rents typically do rent higher.
Okay. And your blended rate there, you said was 468?
I believe that's what I said, yes, 468.
Is this partially owner occupied? Or
No.
is it totally,
Not to my, no, I don't believe it is owner occupied at all.
okay.
Oh, it says partially in on the mailer there, so. Yeah, it looks like, I guess Phillips Tormo might be the owner, I'm not too sure who the owner is, it's not listed, it just says partially.
Did you calculate out the rents they show in the mailer?
I have not.
Square foot? Okay. So they're showing a total income of $299,000 on the mailer.
So yeah, $299, $151 is the rental income.
And you show it as 624,
That is correct.
so you're showing double what they reported
Yep, as they,
on your model.
yeah, they have pretty high vacancy at the moment.
Okay, do you know what the vacancy is at the moment?
I believe they listed as 50% on their mailer.
50%
On
vacancy?
page 11, yeah.
Okay.
I believe that's a 5 and a 0, so.
Do you know there's historical vacancy?
Like I said, at one point, this was fully occupied. It has, I looked into it, I believe, was it, one of the companies in here might have been the Philip Tormo, at one point took over the whole building and has slowly decreased space within the building over the last few years, so.
Okay. So do you think the actual vacancy for 2017 was 50%?
Do I think the actual vacancy? Well, that's speculating, they've listed 50%,
They listed 50.
I don't know.
Okay, I think. Okay, that's fine, thank you.
What year is this flyer? Is there a date
Yeah,
for
the flyers. Well, yeah, it's a little small, but on 15 says 2016 base year, and on, what is this? I believe I got this flyer from the 2015. Yeah, 2015, it's hard to see, it's on page 15, the very bottom, it says Cushman Wakefield, it says 2015, it's really blurry.
So if that's from 2015 and their mailer, which is the end of 17, they're saying 50% there, and here, if you look at the total space of 17,640, would that not indicate some sort of history of high vacancy?
Yeah, I think in the last few cycles, they've had some high vacancy in this building, there's no denying that.
But you don't think,
I don't think it's,
You don't
I
think-
don't think it would be considered chronic vacancy, though, it's occurred just in the last two cycles, I would say. So, and you can see they're trying to rent it out, so.
so you think that 2.5% model vacancy is adequate?
I believe it is, yes.
And you said that the office portion actually has warehouse rents applied to it. Is that why there's no two income streams?
Yeah.
Because you've used the same parameters
Yes,
for the office space as the warehouse space?
correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Newfeld, when you're ready?
Yes, well, I've already discussed the rebuttal information, and just, there's some things in it that of course apply, and in relation to the 5% issue and non-recoverables, driving cap rates, and creative financing.
Okay. I guess we'll
If you have
give,
questions.
yeah, we'll give the assessor an opportunity to
Do
ask
I do
questions
it
on the
now, or
rebuttal.
just do it in my normal question period?
The rebuttal information
Okay,
would
sure.
be separate, so if you have questions for that. Specific to that, those documents.
Yeah, I would like to use this document within my question period, though, because there's some information that I see that I would like to refer to with his brief. So I'd rather ask my questions then.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Right, great. Well, after the presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr.
Thank
Newfeld?
you. So coincidentally, this is the same owner as 160 Provencher. I don't know how that happened. And you can see that he's not having a very good time with his investments, a string of difficult properties. He does have one or two others that are performing better, but not these two. The history of this building, it was built by Phillips Temro. They manufactured car heaters, the portable, or the ones that people used to install in their cars to keep them warm, as well as some other products like that. I think they made block heater products. In 2010, they approached, or they got together with a local investor and sold the property to them. And the sale price didn't matter because they got together, and the owner, this vendor said, I need this much money. And the owner said, well, then this is what your rent's going to be. And then they agreed on it. So that was a vendor take back cap rate. That's from 2010. So the sale price wouldn't be valid, and neither would the rent. Now, that rent was $6.50 a square foot for this property on the take back. But the cap on that sale was in the low 8s. What happened after that was the purchaser decided to put it on the market, still full with Phillips Timro, and the current owner purchased it. And that one, as I showed in there, capped out at 8.47%. A few months after that, Phillips Timro declared bankruptcy. So they left the warehouse portion, which is the large portion, which is 87,000 square feet. And they did retain a sales office in the bankruptcy protection. It was Chapter 11 in the United States. So they maintained that space for a while. So what the owner did is, he had another business, his own business, that he moved in there, and he takes up approximately 70,000 square feet, and the rest of it isn't used. It is connected to the other part of it. It's marked off. I told them mark it off on the floors, get those business tax guys, they're gonna come down and they're gonna wanna knock you for the whole thing. So we did. And the business tax people understood the situation and worked with us on it, because he was only occupying one portion of it. Then, at that point in time, you see the mailer that you received. So the owner's indicating a high vacancy, but 70,000 feet of that is his own use. Subsequent to that, the rest of the Phillips site went moved out. So what you have as a vacancy, an actual vacancy, was the 17,000 feet that he's not using in the big warehouse, and 17,640 square feet of office space, which is 26% vacancy. We didn't adjust for it in our calculation, because this is the opposite situation of Provencher. Provencher had a bad vacancy, and it was fixed up. So our Assessment Act tells us to look backwards, not look forwards. In this case, he had a vacancy when looking forward, that happened going forward, not from historical vacancy. When he purchased it, he was under the belief he'd had a full building. So you see how we're trying to theoretically grapple with these issues and balance it with the act. You have a problem, it gets fixed. You don't have a problem in this case, and it gets worse. As I look at the act, that's all you can do. Now, just to deal with it, we have to look at a market rate, and our market rates don't differ greatly from the assessors. As a matter of fact, had he dealt with this as one huge property, our rates would have probably been very, very similar. And you can see that his rate on 70,000 feet is $440. We've used $450 on the entire property. The two buildings are, I think it was fairly well identified, the two buildings. The large building has an office running across the top. The small building is, you can see it's all industrial space in there. And I've been in both buildings and inspected. You can just tell where the trucks are lining up there, that's how it works. So because the office is inside the big industrial building, it's not gonna get a different rate. It's not, I mean, it's being rented out as is, but because the owner's occupying the big space, he could have a tenant in the other, but you wouldn't see this sort of situation in a market, because you're still having shared facilities, so you would have to demise it, which is why we looked at $450 overall. So again, our overall rent doesn't, I suggest that if had the assessor combined them, our potential incomes would have been probably the same. And we're using a vacancy rate of 2.8%, which is incorrect. The person who did this has been corrected, but he's been using the gross vacancy, which includes owner space rather than investment vacancy. It is 5.7%. That should have been applied. Not going to make a change, but it should be 5.7. Non-recoverables, we're using 28,000, which was our estimate from looking at his statements. And it does work out to 5%. They well exceed that number, but given the bizarre situation with the occupancy, it was going to be very, very high, so we just capped it at 5% in this case, because you could go higher if you had absolute proof. Without it, we reverted to 5%. Structural reserve, 25 cents a foot. Again, the main component of this will be a concern for roof. Roof replacement on this would roughly cost $2 million. And so the concept of putting $33,000 aside, it would take a long time to save up $2 million to replace a roof. However, the life of the roof can be extended by maintenance, and sometimes not all portions of the roof have to be repaired. You can do parts of it. In a big building like this, that's usually how they would do it, section by section. Shortfall we've estimated at 467, and that was looking at the statements, which indicated utilities have been estimated at 235, comparable to what the assessor uses for business taxes. And lastly, so our NOI is 499. We're using a cap which is heavily influenced by the original cap when it was in happier times. The evidence is all in front of you. If you take a look and calculate the Temro rent from the old statement, it's $650 a foot. They're gone. And that was a rent that was put in place to facilitate a lease back. If you put it to the market rate, it's going to indicate a lower value. You know, really we're looking at the difference. Look at the sale price, the difference when you achieve $650 versus $450 is the ultimate difference on this value. And don't believe we have any outstanding appeals on this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lovenstein, questions for the applicants?
Yeah, in your rebuttal submission, the one with the IWAO standards, turning to page 2, you stated that you should not use portfolio sales when you're speaking about it. It also states the same for page 2, 5.5, the acquisition of divestments by large property owners. Using REITs, within your own material, you have the slate portfolio sale. Would you be inclined to take that out now that you've mentioned that?
Absolutely not. The IAAO is the International Association of Assessing Officers. The study was done for mass appraisal. So when you're doing mass appraisal, such as what the city has, when you bring out your parameters, it's done on mass appraisal. And what they're saying for that sort of work on mass appraisal, you don't use it. Site-specific appraisal, that's where the experience of the person doing the job comes into effect. If you have someone who's trained and experienced at doing it, you deal with those sales, you understand, you look for problems, you know what you're looking for, and you do your job that you've been trained and paid for. And I'm not slighting the assessor at all in this, but I'm simply saying it's, on mass appraisal, you don't do the same due diligence as site-specific, so that's why they're saying don't use it. Applies to you, not me.
Right, and you are aware that other appellants or tax agents have brought this in for this cycle, and we've seen it, I think 3 or 4 different times with 3 or 4 different with cap rates now?
For what?
For the site portfolio?
Yeah, I can't speak to anybody else's work, I can only speak to my own.
Okay, so do you feel that maybe that's why they're stating that it shouldn't be used, because it's too difficult to calculate income?
I had no difficulties with it because I had far better access than the rest did. I worked for the vendor, I worked for the purchaser, I worked for the property manager. One of the property managers now works with Colliers. I had the benefit of a senior vice president at Colliers who was able to research the matter at the purchaser's offices and verified it. Like I said, I can't speak for other people. I've seen some sloppy work out there. I'm comfortable with mine.
And you are aware of the advertisement that came out stating there's 12 properties that sold, but you...
That's just somebody who went to the internet. You know, the internet says that elephants are extinct too.
Well, this is from their website.
It's from the internet website, yes, I know what it's all about. It's a misstatement, and, you know, you just be cautioned about your sources of information. It says here, you wanna go back to the standard that you brought up, is how do you verify it? You go back and you talk to someone. It never says here anywhere, let's go check what the internet has to say about it.
So they are a REIT, they do have to disclose how many properties they've sold.
They have to disclose things that are a requirement under the Securities Commission,
Those are all my,
which is different than a cap rate.
those are all my questions.
Nothing on this presentation?
Well, that was only cap rate, I guess. So, but yeah, no, the rest of it, I don't have any questions about right now.
Thank you. Mr. Upton?
Yeah, you reported that the last assessment was $7,270,000.
Correct.
Was that on appeal or municipal board or?
It was changed to that. Someone stole my file in my office. I don't have the details. But I don't think it's outstanding. There were some old appeals on that, but I think they were cleared up through case management. So, yes.
Was this the last assessment by agreement or?
It went to case management. I thought there was yes, I was given an offer to sign. That's all, that's what I remember, but I don't have my file in front of me.
But they reported a sale at 2010, was it? Yeah.
Yes.
For 7,225?
That was the first sale, the lease back.
Yeah. Okay. And your shortfall, is that, you've increased, the shortfall is higher than the assessor. Where'd you get your shortfall?
From the actual numbers, so we had
Actual
looked at the statement that was provided. The expenses are listed at $491,000, but we know that there's no separate metering on this site, because it was designed as a single tenant. So we had good numbers for what they've done, rather underspending on the maintenance side. But that's because it's the high degree of vacancy at this point in time. So they're all here.
You're saying those are actual pay, 467 is actual?
Okay, yeah.
I've taken from actual.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, this is actual, so the utilities of 235 are actual?
No, that was when we used the city number. The actual utilities are 217,000, which would indicate about $1.80 a foot. But we have a large amount of space that's empty, so we're probably not generating the same level of utility costs as it would be for full operation.
Okay, and you said that the 2010 sale was a vendor take back?
Correct.
Do you know anything about the 2014 sale?
Yes, it was, this person bought it on the basis of, as an investment property. And Phillips Temro was in the site,
Right.
paying $650 a foot, which is a holdover from the tenant lease back from 2010.
Okay.
So it seemed
Yeah,
like a good investment
I got it.
until they declared Chapter 11.
My God. And just a minor issue, your leasable area, what's that from?
Mailer.
Okay. It varies
Yeah,
slightly from, it's under 1,000 square feet on 132, so,
Yeah,
so it's insignificant, but
1% is, yeah.
I just wondered yours versus,
I know, like, that's the source we took it from. I think we had seen that number in the past. We are just reverting to this. And it may have been demising, I don't know, maybe some area classified as common when the multi-tenant started happening.
You don't have the mailer in your, right? But the assessor's got his on page 11, so.
Yeah, the assessor's mailer says the
Okay.
same thing.
Yeah. You got it. Okay, thank you. Desire for summation,
Just,
or do you want to leave it till the end and just do a general?
I just want one for this, just a quick summation
Okay.
for this, but it's just, we know that, the 2014 sale was an open market sale, there's no disputing that, it was listed as an open market sale, so I figured it's something that you guys should consider when looking at the, value.
Thank you, Mr. Nuttall.
Well, a sale is of interest as long as the information that supported it as an investment still exists. And that's the problem with that argument. The sale was premised on income. Phillips Temro was paying $650 a foot. Phillips Temro went bankrupt. $650 is not sustainable. And that's something the assessor and I are in relatively close agreement on. We both know $650 was not sustainable, but it drove a previous cap. And that changed, so the value went down when you had to revert to market. Nothing wrong with it as a cap. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll deal with 310 debates. Is this going to have more than one point?
I just want a quick check on this and.
Well, why don't we take 5 minutes then while you check on that? Have a meeting back to order. Next property we're dealing with is 310 debates, and it's just the amount of assessed value we're dealing with. So when you're ready, Mr. Assessor, we'll hear from you, please.
The file number is 194808. Roll number is 060934611715, 310 debates. The assessed value is $10,162,000. The actual year is, and the effective year are 2008, the wall height's 24, and the construction class is metal frame, and the zoning is M2. The land area is 159,102 square feet. The gross floor and leasable area are 74,196 square feet. So the land plan is 2.14. If we turn to page 8, we can get a look at a map. This is in the St. Boniface Industrial Park. Again, it's off Dugald, and it's bordered by Plessis. Page 8 shows, at the bottom of page 8, you can see the street view of the property. Page 9, you can have the overhead view. You can see that the trucks go to the back to back in, and that there's offices in the front. And page 10 gives you a few more views of the rear of the property. Turning to page 3, you can see the rent comparables. They're on Kernahan, Discovery, Chamomile, Almonds Creek, and Logan. They range in rents from $7.50 a square foot all up to $12.42 a square foot. The effective years built range from 1975 all the way up to 2014. And the leased areas range from 43,327 all the way up to 60,897, with the lease terms ranging from 5 years all the way up to 9 years, 9 months, and the lease starts range from 2014 up to 2017. So these rent comparables support the model rents for this particular building. So they are, the rents per square foot for the 22,450 is $9.34, and for the 51,746 square feet, we're using $8.42 a square foot. It's to be noted that as of, you turn to page 11, that currently as of December 13th, 2017, the whole building's being rented out at a net rent of $8.20 by Vita Health Products. If you turn to page 12, you can see that Franklin Electric was in there. They vacated on October 31st, 2016, and then just over a year later, Vita Health took over the whole, the entirety of the building. So, moving on to, back to page 4, and the vacancy is at 2.5%. We're using expenses at 2% and a capitalization rate of 6% for a estimated value of $10,162,000. You can see in our, on page 6, on the capitalization rate chart, this falls on the lower end, at 6%, just above the 5.5%. The reason for this would be that it's a fairly new building, it's in a good location, it's a 2008 build. So we've already taken a look at the mailers on page 12 and 11 and 12. So the capitalization rate evidence, as we've gone through, is on page 13. Non-recoverable expense samplings on page 14. And again, there's another, on page 15, this is the advertisement for the space. They're asking $9 for a net rent. They got $8.20 to buy the health, and just 16 just shows you the location of the unit that they were renting out, and 17 is just another map, page 17. So we feel the value at $10,162,000 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, questions for the assessor?
Yes. Evaluation on pages 4 and 5, is this all done by the model?
It is.
No overrides here at all? Does your model have a method of altering the production of numbers if something has a low site ratio? Say, like this one is basically 2 to 1, right? That is on the low side, correct?
I guess it's pretty, it's lower, I guess, it's not incredibly low. I think for properties like this, it's almost better for them to build out these and use a lot of the land area than actually having a land to building ratio, which is higher. You see that more with manufacturing type properties, not so much.
Well, it
the
is
storage
low,
type ones.
and they have to try to get the semi-trailers to the back, and there's not a ton of room for turning around.
I think we can see in the pictures, it doesn't seem to be an issue. They have a lot of trailers
That
back
wasn't the
there.
question, though. The question was, does your model account for anything on land ratio in its process?
No.
The information presented on pages 11, 12, 11 and 12, are these the mailer returns
Yeah,
supplied by the owner?
yeah.
Have they been altered in any way?
Nope.
Now, you had mentioned, and I don't know what your exact words were, that what did you say about the rental income as compared to your model? I don't wanna, I may have recalled it differently from what you said, so what did you say? In terms of how close they were?
I don't recall saying anything. I just said that they have a net lease of $8.20, and my comparables are in that range,
In that range.
and also same with our model rents.
Okay, that's what you said. Now, $8.20 produces what as potential income? $608,407?
Well, if you've already calculated it out,
Yeah, okay, so that's significantly lower than potential rent.
608.
645.
It's not, it's lower, it's not significantly lower, it's fairly close.
Well, may I borrow $37,000 from you? It's nothing.
You know that's not how it works, so that's fine.
Wow, I mean,
Again, these are model driven, you can see the comparables on this page. Yes, this building is leasing for $8, so 20 cents a square foot.
question on your vacancy. Do you know how the model calculates it? Do you look at just investment vacancies, or do you have another?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I can answer that.
You don't know how they do it? And did you have an opportunity to review the actual expenses, non-recoverable expenses on this property?
I haven't reviewed them in depth, no.
Well, you did submit on page 11, for example, 468,000 of non-recoverable tenant improvements, correct?
That's what they put in there, yes.
Okay. And page 12 indicates full occupancy with rental income of 566, yet their net is 551. So we can assume that there's at least 15,000 in non-recoverables on this site?
Yeah.
Okay. And page, for capitalization, you've included two charts. The one on page 6, I'm just looking at it, and your 20th to 80th percentile is 6.34 to 7.8. So you've gone below, not
Yeah.
you, but the model's gone below the 20th percentile.
It has, yeah.
Okay. And the reasons are?
Well, it's a newer building, it's in a good location. I would say those would be some reasons why it's, as I mentioned before, it's gone to the 6%.
Those are the factors that lead the model to drive that rate. I just want to clarify that those aren't reasons, those are the factors, right?
Sure. Whatever you want to say it.
On page 13, these capitalization rate examples, they are being presented, it says here they are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject, is that correct?
That is correct.
And have you had a chance to review the industrial ones, just to see if you support them?
To see if these support our 6% capitalization rate
Yeah,
for
yes.
this. Well, you have a 4.8.
No, sorry, to see if do you support these?
Do I support
Yes.
this? In what sense?
Well,
Like these are actual cap rates.
have
that
you looked
were
into,
in the
have you
market.
looked, have you looked into these?
No, not me particularly.
Okay. So you're not aware that 90 Park Lane was an owner purchase?
I am aware that it was an owner purchase, or is it, I know that it was vacant for about a month or two before, but there was still income that you could derive from it. I have no idea if it was an owner.
Was the motivation the income, motivation to purchase the income?
Again, I haven't gotten into these, so I can state only what I know.
But would not the motivation to purchase have to be the income if you're going to use it as a cap rate? You have to have the same highest and best use, right, which would be investment?
So the owner purchased it from someone, so they would have used an income to figure out a cap rate for it, right? So you can figure out a cap rate, if there's an income before, applied to the sale price, you can figure it out, can you
A
not?
highest and best use as an investment building means that it gets bought and sold on its revenue. Was it bought and sold on its revenue?
I can't answer that.
Okay. Now, you've had the opportunity to review it, and I'm not asking questions about my evidence, but if 1100 Waverly, roughly, what date would the city have received the information upon which they relied on to determine the income?
For 1100 Waverly,
Yeah.
like the sales mailer for it?
Well, the income mailer would have been April 17 or earlier.
Yeah, we would have had on the mailers from 17, 16, 15, 14, going all the way back.
All the way back from the time that Hydro vacated it and it began, and then it had to be reabsorbed to the market, correct?
Sure.
And was the city on the scene when it was actually sold?
I'm not too sure what that
But
means.
you don't have a mailer that's right from the sale, do you?
Not in my evidence, no.
Do you think the city has one?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, what do you, no, I'm just curious here, what would you do in a situation with another property that's being absorbed back into the marketplace that was empty, and then you have to, and then it gets sold? Isn't there some danger of misapplication of capitalization rate if you don't get right to the sale date?
So you're saying it was a 6-year absorption and it sold when it was 100% full? So that would be based off the income of 100% of it being full?
Well, your question's on my evidence, but what I'm saying here is that.
I'm just trying to understand what you're
Yes,
asking.
oh, okay, well, your mailer never saw it being full.
That I,
Okay. Well, I mean, I know it didn't because as soon as it filled up, it sold, but that's my evidence. And there's a particular style under which it was sold. You're not familiar with the DCF process?
no.
Okay, which is a 10 to 20-year investment window. Now, what about, do you use information that's been supplied to you even if the person supplying it cautions you?
Yeah, I know what you're referring to, you have it in your evidence here. Yeah, we would still use that information.
Okay, it's sort of like that old Saturday Night Live skit, "The milk's sour, I'm gonna drink it anyway," right? Check it myself. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Drucken.
Yeah, on your model rent here, what, did you calculate a blended figure, those two?
No, I can do that for you, Bill. We have 8.67,
8.67?
sorry, 8.701.
70? Okay, I don't think I have any others right now, thank you.
Sorry, your mailer here, I'm just looking at it. You have it broken down into two.
I have two, yes, sorry, I have two mailers here. I wanted to show the end of the lease and the start of the next lease. So the first one is the year end 2017 on page 11, and the second one is the year end 2016.
Right.
Okay. And you've kept it as two separate premises.
At the moment, it's at two separate premises. We could definitely combine them.
The entire building is now used by the one
The
tenant.
entire building, yeah. Although I do believe that the premises are still demised as one and two. I'm just looking at what they put on the mailer. So,
Okay, and on page 3, your comparables, there's one from the St. Boniface Industrial Park.
yeah.
The rest are all over the place. Is that due to the size?
Partially due to the size, yeah, and the age, of course. I was trying to get as close to the 2008 age. So these are the properties that came up for similar rent barrels.
Nothing else similar in St. Boniface Industrial?
A lot of the rents are actually, I found, higher, so.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
We're using actual income, and every property is different, so there's no standard methodology for finding our number. I can tell you what we went through on this site. We looked at the income it had over the years, and we did note that there was a renewal. But in order to get the renewal, there was in excess of $500,000 spent. There's $468,000 that you see is listed on their statements that they've spent on tenant improvements, but there's more than that amortized in the lease. So that's why we would never use 820. Now, the debate, the mistake people make in the debate is they say, look, it's $820, but we know it's costing us $1 to get them in, so we're gonna call it $720 net effective rent. The only thing we can really do in circumstances like that is to disregard the rent, because it leads us all to make assumptions on on creative financing. So that's what we have done. And because we know that, you know, the whole argument on tenant improvements is not only does the city against the owner deducting them, but they also want to include them in the income. You know, can't have it both ways. You either expense it and income it, or you don't expense it and you don't income it. You gotta be consistent. So our choice was that we noted it, and we went back to the old rents, which was a minor difference. We were at $756 instead of $608. The vacancy rate we have listed here is 2.8, and in actuality it is 5.7. And our source documents will attempt to do vacancy rates for non-investment properties. Those aren't tracked evenly because the people who track them don't know what they are. Now, if for example, the last property with the element of owner occupancy, if they'd used that income and expense statement, I guess we know they didn't use it, we would have a 50% declared. And that's, with an owner occupied property, they could be using part of it, and they said, well, it's available, so I'll call it that. So this is why what we try to do is the Johnson report, and we have about 20 pages of properties in the city of Winnipeg broken down by zones, and the investment inventory vacancy rate is 5.7%. This being in St. Boniface, the actual St. Boniface rate is slightly lower at 3.8%. So it's mistakenly we put it at 2.8, but the number should be higher. I'm not changing it to make life easy for everybody. The non-recoverables, we had two major costs that were non-recoverables, and because these are significantly higher than you would normally see, you know, we haven't seen a property today that's performed at 2%. That's the city claims. They've all been much, much higher. So their non-recoverables were at a minimum of $575,000. What we do with those, we amortize them over the period, and improvements we amortize over the length of the lease, which is 10 years, and commissions we amortize over 5 years, which is the length that a typical lease commission is paid over a term of 5 years. So in this case, it's $68,000 in non-recoverables. This is a true building expense. It's going to happen 5 years from now, it's going to happen 10 years from now. You have to take it into account. It doesn't matter that the assessor doesn't like it or disagrees with it. The point is, we had reached an equilibrium of using 5% to cover all of these costs until the city, in their wisdom, changed their mind. Now they allow 0. So this is what they actually are, 68,000. That's what we believe that you have to consider now. If we can't have an agreement that mirrors the market, then we're going to actuals. This one just happens to be significantly higher. The structural reserve, again, before it used to be 2% for other, but as you can see by the documents I handed out, everybody acknowledges it was for structural reserve. In this case, again, 25 cents a foot for roof replacement down the road. Standard rate in the appraisal business. Now the shortfall, we have calculated at 575. I note from the assessor's evidence that in 2016, CAM and tax were 396. So that doesn't include R&M. Oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't include utilities. These are separately metered. So we're actually a bit below that number when you factor in the utilities. But both numbers are higher than their allowance, because again, we're going to actuals. So that leaves us an NOI of 446,370. I didn't select this cap rate, and I noticed that there's an error in the calculation here. I don't know what this retail layout means. It doesn't belong. I don't really think there's anything wrong with the quality and the condition. Our range in Colliers is on this is an investment grade property. The absolute best would be between 7 and 8.25%. I think that given what we do see a bump down the road, that 7.5% would be reasonable for this property, rather than 8.25. Our value is 5,951,600, round to 5,952,000. I know that differs significantly from the previous assessment. My understanding is that the person who filed the appeal did not show up last year. And that's why he got fired and I replaced him. This is a new portfolio for us. So I don't know if they ever did anything about it. Thank you, that's my, however, I did appeal this property when it was first built, years before Pyrete bought it. When, it first leased up, I think that was some time ago. That's my presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yes, here it is, I appealed it in '09.
Mr. Lobenstein.
You stated that the TIs were included in the rent. Can you supply the lease to show that?
I don't have it with me, but if you send me an email, I'll dig it up for you.
On your page, you spoke of the Kohler's model or cap rate percentages. Page 23, the industrial single tenant A is 6%.
No, that's not 23, that's your 2016 rates that are the broker's rates.
So, okay, well, there's 2018, so we're at 6.
Sorry, page 28. The blue reports are based on the broker's reports. So brokers do some differences in their calculations. We're a wonderfully transparent company where I can actually see their workups and tell you what they do. They include closing costs, sales commissions, land title transfer fees, work required after sale, whereas for appraisal and assessment, we don't. So they have to be adjusted accordingly. Page 28 reflects that. And this would be still considered a multi-tenant.
Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Ocken.
Yes, you said the non-recoverable of 68,000 was made up of lease commissions.
Correct.
Did you say tenant improvements there? That's not in there.
Well, this $68,000 is based solely on the tenant improvement cost and the leasing commissions.
But you took the tenant improvements out of the rental?
No, I took it out of the, there was, okay, the lease called for a large amount of money, and I don't know the exact number. Some of that was spent on facilities. 468 was spent on facilities. So, but it's more than that was in the lease. And I hate quoting it without double checking my facts, but I'm thinking we were talking about $1 a foot per year. And so.
What was that for, the dollar?
That was inducements, which some was spent on the facility and some, I imagine the tenants spent on their own uses. But the point is, we didn't use that rent. But when a new tenant moved in, some costs have to be incurred anyway. And one of the costs that they dealt with is removing some of the demising walls. That was a requirement.
That's not under tenant improvements, though.
Well, they're not really improvements, they're alterations.
But isn't it 468? Is it in the 468?
Yeah, that's part of the cost, for example, to remove those demising walls
Okay.
and make those alterations. So they're justifiable costs. Now, there are more costs than that, because if you factor back in, if you take those numbers out of the equation, the NOI is 560 and the income is 574 that year. In the previous year, I mentioned we under questioning, I said the shortfall was about 15,000. And then this year, not including those expenses, it's 14,000. Now, we went to 68. Now, we're showing you our work, so it's a minimum of 14,000, so then we have another 575,000, which an allocation has been put in there, and again, it's transparent, I'm bringing you the methodology, and I want it to be considered seriously, because this is just showing you a case where it greatly exceeds the previous amount at 5%. We wouldn't even be having this debate if the city hadn't chosen to change their rules this year, and we would have been quite happy just to have recognition, because next year, maybe the number is gonna be 3%. This year it happens to be 80%, right? Over the length of the project, 5% is fair. But we got 0. So, well, our alternative isn't to say, give me 5% all the time. I believe our alternative is to show you what the costs actually are, and hopefully some sanity will be restored to the situation, and we can all come to a fair number for non-recoverables. I'd be happy at 5%, or not happy, content.
Okay, thank you.
Did I hear you say that the 2018 assessment was appealed and
Well, there was a no-show.
a no-show, so it was either no hearing or confirmed at the value?
Right.
Okay. So I guess I'd like to redirect that question to the assessor. The 7.9, now it's 10,168, which is like a 28% increase. You know what the reasoning is behind that?
I don't have any of that information. Actually, I was unaware that it was a no-show, if that is the case.
Okay. Sorry. And you've adjusted your cap rate to 7.5%?
That's correct.
I think you explained your reasoning on the non-recoverables.
Yeah,
It works out to like a 12%.
I'm not trying to posture, I really am not trying to posture. I mean, I think we would all be happy if it was just 5%, right? But I'm not gonna come to you and say 5% when the evidence shows it should be much higher. I'd be perfectly pleased if you judged at 5% and I go on my merry way. And yeah, we're gonna have a 3,000 higher value by a fair bit.
Thank you. Any desire for summation site-specific? No? Mr. Neufeld, no? Thank you. Next we'll do what is 555 Camille Sis.
File number is 194807. The roll number is 060531112000. 555 Camille Sis. The assessed value is $4,788,000. The actual year and effective year built are 2007. The wall height's 22 feet. Excuse me. Construction class is metal frame, and the zoning is M2 general. The land area is 236,398. The gross floor area and the leasable area 24,480 square feet for a land to plan of 10.78. If you turn to page 2, there is a sale on this property, December 15th, 2014, for $5.92 million. So turning to page 14, you can see the sales mailer for this
Just a
property.
sec, before we go there, I would object to information that came from an appraisal. And my objection is based on that the city has failed to show whether you have written authorization from both the author of that report and the owner of the report gives an opinion of value, and therefore it's covered by copyright protection. My other concern with that is that someone entering it into evidence, even improperly, leads to a situation where the next person along can use it because it's been entered as evidence. There's a real chance of that, which would be a continued abuse of copyrighted material.
Is this sale of $5,920,000, is that registered in land titles? And
Yeah, that, I can't object to that. What I object to is page 14.
okay, we're not at that yet.
He was
are we?
just starting it, that's when I objected.
Okay. So this is, and what's your objection, Mr. Newton? This is
Copyright material, and you need written authorization for, it's someone's work product. Now, do you want me to read that quotation about professional opinions from the BC Supreme Court? No, I'm not.
So- So is this not someone from the vendor?
But no one has the right to give you somebody else's copyright material.
Did they pay for it?
Possession does not give you reliance. But there's, like I said, there's two issues. One is you don't have the right to use it. And the second is the Supreme Court, BC Supreme Court ruling, an expert's opinion must be the result of independent analysis. Another expert's opinion cannot simply be adopted. This practice does not allow the opposing party or the trier of fact to adequately assess the opinion. It is also trite law that simply attaching another expert's report to your own constitutes inadmissible hearsay opinion evidence. In order for opinion evidence to be admissible, it must be necessary. In the case of an assessment appeal, it is the job of the assessor to come to his own analysis and not rely on the opinion of someone else.
Right, but is this not something that is not necessarily an opinion, they're just giving information?
No, it's an opinion of value. All appraisals are opinion of value.
And how is this?
It's
an
not
appraisal?
it's not a fact.
How is this an appraisal?
They asked, have you done an appraisal on it? Answer, yes. How much was the appraisal for? Amount stated.
That's what you're objecting to,
Yes,
that
that's
portion
correct.
of it?
That's correct.
Okay.
I know that there was a stroke put through it.
Yeah, that, I'm in agreement on something like that where there's no supporting evidence or the person's not there to answer questions. We're not gonna take that into consideration.
And the same goes with page 15 where the reported capitalization rate. That requires an expert to calculate that as well.
That would be on the sale of their own property though.
Was this purchase price based on the property's net operating income? Yes. What is the capitalization rate? That requires an expert opinion.
Vicky Wang and the analyst might be the expert opinion on
Sorry?
that. The analyst?
No,
On page.
Vicky, no, she's not.
You don't know that.
Does she have the initials behind her name?
She's an analyst.
She doesn't have the initials behind her name. It's a double-edged
that's-
sword for you anyway.
Yeah. To me, that's just, to me, that's a calculation.
Well, I think from your background, you would assume it to be so. From mine, I would say that it requires more than a calculation. I think it's just, we see this too often where people think that these things are standard. They're not.
Okay.
They're all done by hand.
Okay, and in this case, I'm not going to remove it, but we'll place what relevance we think, based
Okay.
on what you're saying and based on what the assessors say.
Okay.
Okay? Sorry, you may continue.
Well, to the top of page 14 where it says considerations paid and sworn value is at $5,920,000.
Right.
So that much we know. So we'll move on from the sales mailer. We'll go to page 8, take a look at the location. Again, this is in the St. Boniface Industrial Park. The bottom of page 8, you can see the street view. You can see it's got offices on the first and second story of the building. Page 9, you get the overhead look. You can see the large land to building ratio for this particular property. They have loading docks on either side of it. And page 10, you can get another overhead look to get an idea of how the property looks. Turning to page 3, you can see the rent comparables. They range in rent per square foot from $10.50 all the way up to $12.95 a square foot. The years are from 2000 all the way up to 2014 for effective year builds, and the average wall heights range from 20 all the way up to 26 feet. The leased areas range from 15,000 all the way up to 40,000. The lease terms range from 5 years up to 10 years, and the lease starts range from 2012 to 2016. And they're on Mirandon, Haggard, Chamomile, Nature Parkway, and Marion. So some of them are fairly close to the subject properties. And as a matter of fact, 560 Chamomile is directly across from the subject property. 25 Haggard is a very similar type of building. It's a very long building with offices in the front, and they load from the side as well. In terms of land to building ratios, these are all lower than the subject property. The first one's at 3.5, then we have 5.7, 6.38, 2.34, and 5.08. Moving on to page 4, we see we're applying $12.38 a square foot for this property at 24,480 square feet, 2.5% vacancy, 2% expenses, and a 6% capitalization rate for an estimated value of $4,788,000. Again, on page 6 is our capitalization rate chart. The industrial one's second from the top, and 6% falls between falls between the low and the high, and the lower end at 6%. Page 11 and 12, or page 11 has the mailer. 12 is capitalization rate evidence. 13 is non-recoverable expense sampling. So we feel that the value at $4,788,000 is fair and equitable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Newfield.
Page 4, is this from the model?
Yep.
Kind of puzzled when we have a property down the street where the model's telling us it's $7 and this one's at $12. How does that happen?
Well, I believe the 2007 age, pushing it up. $12 is square footage.
The other one's 2008.
Yeah, I know, but it is quite a bit smaller, at 24,480 square feet. So
Well, no, the other one, you did it on 2 pieces, which weren't smaller. Roughly the same size, 22,000 feet and 51,000 feet.
yeah, but the overall size of the building is quite a bit larger.
We just had that discussion with overall size, didn't we? Your other pieces, similar size, came in lower. So I just wondering how it can be so much higher. The information on page 11, is this the owner's returns? And has it been altered?
No,
Did you look at the lease?
I do not have access to
No, I meant the terms, I'm sorry, the lease terms.
like the lease start 2015 to 2020.
Yes.
Yep.
And do you know anything about the expiration of this property?
I do not know.
I noticed in some of the other ones, you had found sales flyers and lease flyers. You didn't research the one on this one?
I didn't know.
Okay. You're not aware that it's available right now?
No, no.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Upton?
Yeah, the 6% cap rate, you took off your page 6, you said?
Yeah.
And where is that on 6?
It's on the lower range, on page 6, if you look down,
Industrial.
industrial, single tenant is 5.5 to 9.8, it's in the, it's not within the 20th to 80th percentile.
Yeah, it's not within the 20, okay.
Yeah.
Below the 20th percentile?
Mhm.
Okay. I don't think I have anything else right now.
Land to building is 10.78,
Yep,
but there's no adjustment for additional land.
not towards the cap rate, no.
Or, okay, and there's nothing
Well, I think
for additional value either.
I think you can see with the rent comparables that, like, that's why I went through the land to building ratio with them for the rent comparables, that it seems to be that they do seem to rent a little bit higher with higher land to building ratio.
That's what you were trying to prove with
It's
the,
just I'm showing now, doesn't mean the model is accounting for that, I'm just saying that seems to be the case with.
thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Thank you. Sorry, there was a bit of a misunderstanding here. I did not give instructions to anyone on how to prepare this, but I gave them some market information that they wrote down incorrectly. So I do have a very large change to make. We're not entirely crazy. The subject property has a very good performing lease on it, which is expiring. The tenant is given notice, and the site has been on the market for about a year. We believe a new lease has been secured, and it's nowhere near paying as good as the old lease. It was designed and built as a cross-dock facility. So cross-dock is designed so one size truck comes in on the one side, and then another size truck lines up on the other side, and they offload big into small, small into big, whatever's required. This type of trucking is generally obsolete. There are still a few users who practice it, but the amount of cross-dock facilities in Winnipeg that are no longer in use is large. I can think of several I've appraised, Logan on Fife, where they were demanding good rents, but they're not getting them anymore, because once the cross-dock usage is gone, you're left with an elevated dock building with doors on both sides. So adaptive reuse is difficult. That's the problem, the main issue with this property. So the lease, it was well known that it was going, it was expiring. The information I was trying to tell the people was that the new number is $7 a foot. It's post-reference. And I think they heard me wrong. And just as support for it, on page 3, there are a number of rents in between 20 and 40,000 square feet. The highest is 1175 Wilkes, which is a new build. That went for $707 a foot, and that's actually a entertainment complex now. It was built though as a multi-bay industrial building, and that is extremely comfortable size. The only thing is it is not a cross-dock facility, but it does support the $7 rent. Now, going through, applying the $7 rent, I can give you all the numbers or just tell you what I did. I put in the market vacancy. I very quickly just put in 5% for non-recoverables, 2% for structural reserve in the interest of time, and my NOI is now 150,281. And as far as the cap rate goes, since the board in their wisdom decided to leave in the 7.5 quoted in the assessors, I think it's good for them to get the information, so let's use it. So I capped at 7.5%, that's values $2,003,747, rounded to $2,004,000. Another significant request for a decrease. The property, the error that has occurred on this property is it has been mistakenly valued on a leased fee basis. It had a good performing lease. It is proven that it's, first of all, you can't use leased fee, you have to use fee simple, and it's also proven that it's not sustainable. And it's reverting back to market, which is $7. Again, it's post-reference, so my support for the 7 will come from the rates I quoted you. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Thank you.
So you're still using $8.53 for a shortfall?
No, I missed that entirely. I actually forgot to add the shortfall in my calculation that I just redid. So, that's fine, I'll just leave it as is.
Okay, I guess so none of these calculations matter.
No, I'm not using any of them, I just blitzed through it very, very quickly to save some time. I'm using a $7 rent, market vacancy, 5%, non-recoverables 2% for other, I forgot the shortfall.
And you're not breaking up the office and the warehouse, it's just.
No, because there was a misunderstanding here. I provided the information to the people doing it, and they, I guess, didn't put it in. It's okay, they never listened to me. That means, it keeps us both independent.
Okay, all right, those are all my questions.
Mr. Upton?
Yeah, the $7 rent is a long way from the comparables the assessors used.
Yes, I don't know how they,
We're talking about big numbers here, difference.
yes, I do not know how they support that, but.
Some of there were actuals reported to the assessment department, I assume.
Well, you know, if you want to ask me questions about theirs, I believe.
No, I'm not asking, I'm asking why are you so.
Oh, because I don't believe their numbers. I know that some of these are office use. I believe,
Offices?
yeah, I think, or like, I'm not entirely sure about Camille Sis, the one there, but there were a number of facilities built, they were built to suit. There was FedEx and Purelator and another one, DHL. We don't see numbers like that. Haggard is, I'm trying to remember. I didn't know you were gonna ask me questions of these. I just, like,
No.
my whole concept on the rents is, you heard earlier about the Vita Health lease, which we knew face is $8.20, but we knew that there was at least $1 built in there for TIs. And the issue there isn't whether you should adjust it or how much, just don't use it. So very typical with buildings like this is what you see, is that someone reports the rent to you that has TIs in it for build out, and it's not a net rent of an actual industrial building, it's leased fee, and it's face rent. So when we compiled our list on page 3, reason we're sticking with this list is because we did the leases or manage these properties, and except for the ones in bold, which we got from the city, like, we also investigated to make sure that they were actual net rents. That there's, like, for example, we have one in 1450 Mountain at $5, but there's another lease in there that's significantly higher, where there was a $2 million TI allowance. So that money's being repaid through the rent. Let's get back to what I said earlier about creative financing. Let's not adjust it. It doesn't become part of value, it's simply out. And that's my opinion on many of these assessment ones. I mean, I know who the property owners are on several of these, and I know what their inducement packages are.
So your view would be these $5, $4, et cetera rents, $6 are all within
They're
the
clean.
proper type of
Yes,
facility, whereas you feel the assessors comparables are not
that's correct. That, well, I.
same kind of facility.
I'm fairly positive that the first two, they have a standard improvement allowance that they'll pay in.
Okay.
And that just comes out in a higher lease rate. Like the face rate on number one and number two, the asking is between 8 and 9. So I don't know why you can close at $10.50. Someone asks you for a rent of $9, you close it at $12.55. Someone's a really good negotiator. They can talk you up $3.50 a foot.
So you just took your $7 off of your,
Yes.
deducted from your list.
Well, I also know that that's what again, post-reference, but that's what the new rent's gonna be. We already brought an offer to the landlord.
Thank you.
I noticed that there's nothing from St. Boniface Industrial Park in your rents. You didn't have access to any of those?
No, at a glance, I'm seeing some St. Boniface general, but not industrial park. It's not a good region, really, and not a competitive region. The highest rents are gonna be seen in southwest Winnipeg. After that, there's really nothing to pick from all the other locations. There's down rents, lowest ones will be EK Elmwood, that Bowman industrial area. That's on the low side, and then everything else is in between. The St. B, no, that's more like the furniture park area. Transcona's got some larger ones. No, sorry, I don't think there's enough to differentiate the markets other than the two I've identified, being at the higher and lower ends of the range.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment, since this was brought up with Mr. Newfield's rental rates, that if you look at the majority of them, they're not at market anymore, they've all expired. So they're 2012, like starting around King Edward, which is 14,000 square feet. They're all 5 years, starting in 2012 or 11 or 13 or 12. So I wouldn't consider any of these market at the time of the reference date.
Yeah, and the one I picked was from 2017.
When you pick.
That was your summation, and that was your summation, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
You're still okay? Okay, let's move on. 340.
I apologize that this is taking so long for my part in it, but I have to be on the road by 2 o'clock. So,
You will be.
yeah, okay.
There's a meeting in this room at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
We'll do our best.
No, I can call someone and have them come then.
Well, we have 4 properties left.
An hour and
We're
20
looking at
minutes.
an hour and a half.
Okay.
So unless there's something specific that's going to be a testing point with someone. Okay. All right, let's forge ahead then, please. 345 debates.
345 debates, the file number is 194438, the roll number is 0605308830. The assessed value is $4,551,000. The actual year bill ranges from 1998 to 2010, same with the effective year bill. The wall heights range from 9 feet to 16 feet, and the construction class is metal frame, and the zoning's M2. The land area is 188,709 square feet. The gross floor and the leaseable area is 46,002 feet for a land plan of 4.45. So if we turn to page 8, we can see this one's also in the St. Boniface Industrial Park. If you look below at the street view, you can see a look at the building itself. You can see the 2-story office space, and that would indicate the 2010, the 1998 to the 2010 effective years. That was a new build then. Turning to page 9, you can see the layout of the property from overhead view with parking off to the side, where trucks can come in and back in to unload all their materials. And page 9 gives you another view of that. You can see the overhead doors. Page 10 again, you can just get another look at the layout of the property. I've included some pictures on page 11. These are actually taken from the internet, from a free press article that was a few years ago about the facility. As you can see, there's lots of cooler space in the facility. This is used by the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority for, I believe it is, hospital food. So this is where they, I guess, process them, pack them, and ship them out. Page 13, so you can see this cooler space, and page 13, there's assembly lines. And then page 14 is the permit detailing the construction of the additional office space there, and the value of it was for $2,190,000. Page 15 has the mailer. It's owner occupied. So turning to, so we'll have to go look at some rent comparables here on page 13. So the rent comparables are on Mountain, Midland, Scurfield, Logan, Mountain, and Lowson. The Scurfield one's kind of interesting because it's actually Gordon Food Services that are in there, so it's a similar type of tenant. That's to this building here. The rent per square foot ranges from $5.95 all the way up to $9. The effective years built range from 1981 up to 2002. The wall heights range from 20 feet all the way up to 27 feet, and the leased areas range from 26,491 square feet up to 48,800 square feet. The lease terms range from 1 year all the way up to 10 years, and the lease starts range from 2014 up to 2018. So these rent comparables support our market rent of $6.31 a square foot. We're applying that to 46,002 square feet to get a potential rent of $290,273. We're applying 2.5% vacancy, a 2% expenses, and a 6% capitalization rate. As we spoke of before, the capitalization rate is not within the 20th to the 8th percentile. It's on the lower end of the industrial cap rates. Page 7 has the Municipal Assessment Act, and I believe that our assessment of $4,551,000 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
So you didn't inspect this property, those aren't your pictures?
As I stated, they were not my pictures.
No, but you didn't inspect it either?
No, I didn't.
And page, workup, page 4, is this all model?
All model, yeah.
So we've got the same question again. Here we have roughly in the same square footage, a little bit smaller. Now we're at 631, just down the street.
Yeah, well, I would say wall height plays a factor in that. It's quite low wall height at 16 feet, and also it is a 1998 build with a 2010 addition to it, but the majority of the building is 19.
The rent, half the rent of the other one.
Yeah.
Is it? Now, with the concept of the low ceiling, then why is your cap rate then so low? Wouldn't that be reflected in its alternate use, which is a cap issue?
I don't think so. It's just one factor. There's so many other factors that are involved in the cap rate, such as location, age, square footage, quality of the building. It's not.
But how many does the assessment department apply for cap rates? How many parameters or inputs are there actually? Do you know?
Unfortunately, I don't have that information with me now.
6?
I'm not gonna
15?
I'm not gonna
No,
speculate.
yeah, okay. But we've heard a few age.
I'm telling you what the drivers are, yeah.
Yeah, right, that's what I was wondering. But they're not necessarily the same as what the market would use, are they?
Ours are our own, yes, they're not the market ones.
Okay. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Elton?
Yeah, this is 46,000 square feet, and a good portion of this is office.
I don't, I would say the majority, as you can see from the pictures, the majority of it is warehouse. If you look on page 9, you kind of get an overhead look of where the new office was built, so the majority of this building is warehouse.
Okay, so you just chose one rate rather than split it off?
Yeah, we don't normally split off
What percentage is office then?
the exact percentage.
Oh, roughly.
Usually it's around 10% for
So
industrial.
this would be about 10%?
It's probably pretty accurate. I would say it's probably close to 10%, yeah.
Okay. Okay, fine, thank you.
I have no questions.
Sorry, I just,
You have a follow-up?
it's sort of a follow-up, no, it's not really, but I'm just looking at page 15. The utility expenses, are there supposed to be decimal points in there, do you think, or are they actually saying $357,000 for water? I don't think I was able to download a copy.
I didn't type this up, so I have to go with what they've put.
So you're saying that this is being presented as,
I can
hasn't been
I
altered?
can only present it as it shows.
Yeah, okay. So 1.7 million in expenses according to this. Okay, sorry, okay, I'll. I'll just start here.
Please.
Okay, so it is a commissary. They make the food for all the hospitals. I really don't know if every single hospital output comes from here or whether there's a focused service for certain areas. But it is a food preparation facility. Not really what you would call industrial use. It's a kitchen. We're not very far apart on our rents because it's almost reasonable, so it's a little over $6 and the assessor's a few $1,000 more, so it's not a major difference. As I mentioned, the vacancies, we've listed it incorrectly, but I'm not gonna make a change. In this case, we're using a 5% non-recoverable because the statements, as you can see, may not be correct, I don't know. I mean, maybe this is the food preparation cost, they've only got 1 meter and they use a lot of water in their food, I don't know. The hydro costs are ridiculously high, so we have, now, obviously they didn't use this in your modeling, otherwise everybody would have a really high shortfall rate.
It's a one bill.
Yeah, but we really had no choice but to use more standardized amounts, and so that's what we did. We used 5% for non-recoverables in the roof, the structural reserve, same as before. Shortfall, where the taxes are actual and the rest are estimated because there's absolutely nothing we can do with these. The shortfall would be higher in a facility like this because of what it is. Our NOI then is 241, which the major difference would be just basically it's the treatment of the non-recoverables is the major issue, and a small difference in the rents. Capitalization rate is where we grossly differ, and we had a choice here of how to deal with the unique type of building. And there's lots of ways you can do it. You can have a very high non-recoverable cost, or you can look for a different rent, or you can capitalize it, and we chose capitalization. The problem with this building is it was designed and built exclusively for their use. So its attraction on the market is very low. You're going to have to find another commissary. There's one coming up later today too. But it's not a very popular use. And the costs with it are one of the worst parts of it, because most buildings just have to worry about meeting building code. This building has to meet food handling code, health inspection. So that means impermeable surfaces and sanitation procedures. And you can see from the pictures that they do that. You notice little issues like, you notice that the light bulbs are all enclosed. That's part of the impermeable surfaces issue. That the doors are on automatic closers, and people are covered up. And all those walls have impermeable coverage on it. So that's the issue with it, the cost of that. And I think the 8.75 is an estimate, but it definitely would cap higher, or it would rent lower, or we would hire non-recoverables. And we think capitalization is the best expression, because capitalization is the concept of anticipation. Well, what would you anticipate for a return on this? The high risk, if you're using it as a commissary, you have the double risk of sanitation standards to meet too. You lose it, you lose everything. So I think our number reflects that. The last thing I want to say about this is the previous assessment was not a decision. It was, we had finally reached the stage after a few years of wrangling on the WHA's liability and class issues, that we had got into a judgment, an agreement on all the properties, a consent order, that's what it was called, where both parties came to a meeting with the judge and we consented to doing certain things. One of the things we were required to do at the consent order was no value challenges for this particular year, withdraw all value challenges. So we did not end up challenging the value. And you can see that from, well, you don't have it in front of you, but the last assessment was just that the assessor made a recommendation to go from class 60 to class 40 school exempt, and we accepted it based on the consent judgment that we had entered into. So that only covered the 1 year. We knew there were problems with the value, and now we'd like them addressed. Thank you, that's my presentation.
Okay. Mr. Lovenstein?
I'm just a little confused on, so we know like from the mailer that their expenses are very high, but you didn't supply the mailer, so I'm not too sure how you calculated your taxes, your utilities, and your R&M.
Well, the taxes are actual.
Yeah, okay.
Utilities is a standard amount that we would took from the business assessment levy, which is $2.35 a square foot. It's a fairly, it's a safe standard number to use if you have no abnormalities. Their actuals are 100 times higher than that.
And I agree, because sometimes you're using actuals and now without the
Well,
mailer,
generally-
so I'm just confused on your methodology.
No, generally, we'll have the actual taxes, and generally we'll use the city number on the utilities, because you get inconsistent information in that some properties are separately metered, tenants pay, some they don't. There's the concept of vacant occupancy. There's people like this who use a lot of utilities, so you can't even judge how much they should actually use. A restaurant's the same thing. So unless there's a real reason for it, we're gonna default to the $2.35 in utilities. And repair and maintenance in this case is just an estimate, because we have maybe 40 managed properties at Colliers Industrial, and $1.50 a foot is a minimum number. So so it goes real estimate.
That's my only question.
Mr. Upton?
Yeah, can you comment on the permit detail that the assessor's shown here? He's got a project value of $2,190,000, and a construction value of $657. Was that building this new office or what? On page 14.
Okay, they built an addition, 7,600 square foot addition. And so that was the structural cost of the $675. And then the rest was for interior fit out. So this project, and I'm just double check these dates on here, issue date 2009.
Right.
Yeah, I believe they purchased this building, put an addition on it, and then did the interior fit out for the commissary. So that would include putting the equipment in and the air handling.
A lot of the interior equipment.
Yeah, like I said, those enclosed lights, they aren't like these. These are just lenses. These things are real. My brother makes them, his company. That's why I know all about this. I had to hear his story forever, but they're, you know, the shields are $200 a shield for a real shield.
So those are interior fittings.
Yeah, but they're not marketable, and
No.
they're part of the business.
Okay, thank you.
No questions, thank you. No summation, either party?
It's good.
Move on to 45 Durand.
45 Durand Road, file number 19297. The assessed value, the roll number is 0605308250. The assessed value is $1,018,000. The actual year and the effective year built are 1990. The wall height's 18 feet. The land area is 64,571 square feet. The gross floor area is 9,728 square feet for a land plan of 6.64. Turning to page 2, there was a sale in 2010 for $710,000. We do not have a sales mailer for this one, unfortunately, but we did research it and found that it was a good sale between two parties that were unrelated. Turning to page 8, we can take a look at the property again. It's in St. Boniface Industrial Park. Page 8 will give you a street view at the bottom of page 8. Page 9, you can see the layout of the property. It's, like we said, it's got a fairly large land to building ratio. And you can get another view of they have a little hut on the side there, which we are not assessing for. And page 10 has just a few more pictures of the property. So turning to my rent comparables on page 3. We have 90 Durand Road, which is across the street from the subject property. It's on a 10-year lease. It's renting at $6.50 a square foot. Its lease start was 2012. Then we have 560 Archibald, which is fairly close to the subject property in the sense it's not the same area, but it's in the St. Boniface area. $6.55 a square foot. And then 32 Beijing is actually across from the property as well. It's renting for $7.03 a square foot. 30 Durand is directly straight across from the property. It's renting for $6.25 a square foot. And then 927 Dugald, further down from the property. It's just past Lagimodier, still in the St. Boniface area, is renting for $7.38 a square foot. The wall heights of all these properties range from 16 feet all the way up to 24 feet. The leased areas range from 5,880 square feet all the way up to 12,524 square feet. So turning to page 4, you can see that we have the rent at $6.67. It's a model rent. We're applying it to the leased area of 9,728 square feet. Vacancy of 2.5%, expenses of 2%, and the capitalization rate of 6% for an estimated value of $1,018,000. Again, turning to page 6, you can see that falls on the lower end of our capitalization rate table at 6%. Page 11 has the mailer. This is an owner-occupied property. We've gone over the capitalization rate evidence and the non-recoverable expense sampling. So we feel the value of $1,018,000 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Sure. Page 4, is this all model?
Yeah.
So similar rent as the last one, even though the size is greatly different?
At 9,000 square feet, it is a similar rent, yeah.
Okay. And your cap rate is below the 20th again?
It is correct, yeah.
And that's because, why?
Again, the size of it, see the location of it.
Your 18-foot wall height, though, that's external measurement, correct?
Correct.
And did you inspect? Okay. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ruffin?
No questions, thank you.
So the 1990 age, that doesn't necessarily come into,
It would come into play as well, but also the square footage as well.
thank you. Mr. Neufeld, your opinion, please.
This is another commissary. Gondola Pizza's commissary. They're a little bit different than the WHA in that they don't do the same amount of food preparation. Most of it is reserved for dry storage items that are acquired from different suppliers and then distributed to their own properties and their franchise properties. It's to retain control over the ingredients so that people aren't using inferior ingredients. Had a gondola on the weekend, it was quite good. So the food handling is, the requirement is nowhere near as extensive. I think there's some repackaging that going on there, and I just don't recall everything. My inspection was some time ago. I was just looking it up, I couldn't even find it. As an owner-occupied site, I think what's good about this property is there's a good land configuration, or a good land amount with it. The building is on the smallish side, which, and it's not intended for trucking business, which is a detriment since most of our industrial users are truckers or truck transportation. I see our people put a rent on it of $5, and I think that's a modest rent. It may get slightly higher. I don't even have a major issue with the assessor's rent, that it could possibly hit in the neighborhood of $6. I haven't done a recalculation. Vacancy should be 5.7%. The non-recoverables, this was just taken from the statement, it was just an assumption that the $3,400 figure would be a non-recoverable, but then that's professional fees. This is an owner-occupied site though, so these costs are difficult to determine if they would be recoverable or not. The structural reserve for, in this case, the roof, if you note the pictures that both parties have presented to you, the roof does not look very healthy at all. 1990, so at this point in time, it's 29 years old, and likely nearing the need for some work, especially on the soffit and fascia, or what's that other thing, the edge of it. So that's a very reasonable consideration for expense. Shortfall, we had estimated, in this case, it was the actual tax, estimated utilities, and actual repair and maintenance. These numbers were a little more reliable. Capitalization, this isn't a great revenue producing property. There's nothing that sticks out as saying, hey, this is a good building on the market. It fills a need. However, there is land available, so I think we're being a little skimpy on the cap rate and probably a little skimpy on the rent. So probably adjust that. I would anyway, just looking at it, maybe use a more aggressive capitalization rate to account for that. And that would be about 7.75%. That would account for both. So my new value is 507,948. Rounded to 508,000. The major obstacles in the past that have been that the sale has been, there's been a lot of reliance on the sale. We know it. They told us at the hearing last time, you got a sale. I did investigate the sale. There was nothing wrong with it other than the motivation by the owner for his own spot. It was not an investment sale. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lovenstein, questions?
Plus, the assessor made a reasonable recommendation last time.
Again, your calculations, none of these are based off the actuals for the utilities and the repair and maintenance?
No, tax and, or repair and maintenance, yes. Utilities is just the estimate.
And you only adjusted the cap rate, you're not adjusting the rent?
Well, I think the rent should go up and I think the cap should go down. I was thinking in my head a mid-5 rent and an 8% cap. And so, to do it very quickly, that would be approximately 7.75 on the cap. We're running long here and the board only pays moderate attention. I'm just speeding things up. I'm joking. See if I woke anyone up.
Those are actually all my questions anyways.
Thank you. Mr. Upton?
No questions.
So, just your one comment you made, you said the assessor made a reasonable recommendation last time to 775,000,
That's correct.
but the value has gone down by 50% since that time?
No, I think he made the recommendation, he was looking at the sale, because I know because he was discussing it, and he's saying it should have gone up from the sale. And then at the time, I hadn't investigated the sale, and I talked to the owner afterwards, and, you know, it was an owner-motivated purchase, so I wouldn't put much weight on it, but, nor do I want to chase sales. And last time, my workup was 427,000. I don't, I'm not trying to posture here at all. That these properties on the market would achieve mixed results. We have a monthly meeting, and it's very funny. One day a guy will come in and say, I just got this deal, really good rent rate, I got $8, guy needed the property, and things are hot. Next month, same guy comes in, yeah, I got this real problem with this property, we got it listed at 6, I got an offer for 350, and I think we're gonna have to take it. And you know what, that's the market.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on. 845 Latawadi.
Phone number is 0605022000. 845 Lajimodier. The assessed value is $7,526,000. The actual year and the effective year built are 1975 to 1977. This is a multi-tenanted building. It has 18 premises on it. The wall height is 20 feet. The construction class is masonry, bearing walls, and the zoning is M3. The land is Land area is 210,451 square feet. The gross floor area is 90,577 square feet, and the leasable area is 88,743 square feet. The land to plan is 2.49. So we'll take a quick look at the map. This is on Lajimodi Boulevard, just before Dugald. You can see the page 9. You can see the view of it from the street. Bottom of page 9. There's a couple overhead views. You can see that there's the overhead doors at the back of the building. And page 11 just gives you another view of the other side of the second building there. Page 13 has the mailer. So on page 13 of the mailer, top of the page, if you look at the RMN structural and roof, they seem to have a roof replaced for 1.75 million. And an HVAC looks like it was replaced or a few HVACs for $94,000. So there are some capital expenditures that have occurred on this building. Page 9 has the tenant roster, or sorry, not page 9, page 15. And same with page 16 as well. So you get an idea of some of the rental rates for this property. Moving on to the rent comparables. Those for similar types of area and flex, the same type of area, flex warehouse buildings, which this one is, for similar square footages and obviously age. So we have rental rates that range from $6 all the way up to $7. Effective years built range in the 80s, 1980 or 1977 up to 1988. The leased areas are similar to the premises, and they range from 6,966 square feet to 1,300 square feet, and the lease terms range from 1 year all the way up to 5 years. And of course, these are all within a similar area. They're on Debates, Niagara, Marion, Dugald. So it's all similar area as the subject property. So turning to page 5, you can see the premises. Like I noted before, there's quite a few premises. The blended rate is $6.31 for all of the premises for a potential rent of $560,032. We're applying our 2.5% vacancy, or 2% expenses, and a 7% overall capitalization rate for an estimated value of $7,526,000. You can see on page 7 that the capitalization rate falls between our 20th and our 80th percentile. The Municipal Assessment Act on page 8. And there is one permit on page 18. It's just for the exterior recladding the building to show that they're upkeeping with the property. The declared construction value was $137,500. So again, we feel the value at $7,526,000 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Was page 4, is this all modeled?
It is. Page 5.
And 5, right.
Or, sorry, it's my page 5, your page 4.
4 and 5. 4 and 5.
Yeah.
And I have to keep asking this question, but pages 12 to 15, is this the owner's, 12 to 16, this is the owner's response to the income and expense questionnaire?
It is.
Has this been altered in any way?
It is.
How many units do you have here on page 4 listed? Do they correspond to the same number of units in the master rent rule?
That I haven't compared, but I believe we have 18 premises, I think I stated.
Yeah. And you provided 1, 2, 3, counting 20 in the rent rolls.
So, yeah, we might have to go and inspect and either combine some premises or.
Yeah, or break some apart, yeah,
Break
sure.
some.
And did you note in their declaration what their vacancy was? It is higher than your model, is it not?
Not noting their vacancy, can you tell me which page you're on?
Well, I'm just looking at the rent roll, and I noticed that there's lots of vacant units here.
Oh, you're looking at the rent roll, I see.
Yeah, there's 9,340 feet, and on one page, and then they have another section, another 1,742. So they have approximately 11,000 square feet vacant. So that's about 12%.
Sure.
They're a bit higher than, I found, oh, I see, they only are 18 units, I see, I was reading it wrong, but yes, they had combined some here. So you don't, you're not taking the actual vacancy into consideration?
We would have taken into consideration when they sent it in with the model, we would have compiled it, but we feel that
Okay.
2.5
Covers everything, okay. Thank you, those are my questions.
Mr. Upton?
Yeah, your rents on page 4 are all model rents.
On page, yeah.
They're all model rents, then. You said 6.31 blended?
Correct.
Good, thank you.
I have no questions, thank you. Mr. Neufeld?
Great. So, page 1, I don't like it. I think someone was making a point here, but it certainly makes me look like an oracle. But I kept saying that roof replacement was $20 a foot, and here we have a 88,000 square foot building where they replaced the roof at a cost of $1,560,000. And so that's proof that what we've been telling you, what I've been telling you about this reserve is required. This is a one-time event, and this could last 30 years, it could last 20 years, maybe 40 years. It's all deals with the concept of having an adequate replacement. I probably wouldn't have worked it out this way myself, because I would amortize a roof replacement, if I was gonna do this at all, a lot bigger, longer than the 10 years that was done here, because they should last longer with repair and maintenance. I've actually just removed that item entirely, and I also noted there was an error in the calculation of the net income, and that included vacancy already. It was net with vacancy. So our potential rent is actually $493,994. Then the income after the vacancy is $68,907. That's the way it should have been calculated. And this is actual income. It is still about $70,000 lower than what the assessor is using, the actual income. And the net rent rate on here then would be $493,999 divided by 88473. So the blended rate is $558 on the whole building, so that's actual. I think when you have this many units in the building and been in the business this long, that you're going to hit the equilibrium where you reach market, because no one leaves money on the table. So after hitting 468, I just changed the non-recoverables to 5%, even though in this particular year it was 1.6 million. A big year, big bad year. So the 5% is 23,445. And the structural reserve, as I mentioned, this kind of proves our point on structural reserve, as the 2% is very modest when you have to have a bill of 1.5 million. Even if we were putting our money away for a long time, replace that roof would take 71 years of saving money, not including interest. So that's a very modest reserve amount. Shortfall is our estimate of actual, which is actual taxes, estimated utilities, actual repair and maintenance, not including the roof. Our NOI has now been adjusted upwards to 394,045. And this property, sorry, I just wanted to double check something here. Yeah, okay, last year it was applied at 8% cap rate. Cap rates have gotten higher, not lower, but we're still gonna use 8%. And that comes to a value of 4,925,563, rounded to 4,926. It's a slight increase over last year. And the consistency is because there's nothing really strange happening to the income year, just the roof was replaced mid-year. That's my presentation.
Thank you.
It's 4,926.
Mr. Lobenstein?
You'd consider this area St. Boniface?
Yeah.
Do you have the Transcona vacancy rate on?
No, this was the actual cash vacancy rate. And the vacancy I normally would have applied is 5.7 for a citywide rate. But I was just defaulting to the actual, because I noticed the map error, and we had already calculated the actual. So I just, you see where I had that entry for 25,000? I just turned it around and put it on the other side.
So you're not including the roof repair here?
No.
And that's because it's a capital expenditure
No.
and under appraisal?
No, it's just that, well, it's a long-lived item. You don't really know how long you should do it for, so we just went to 5%.
Yeah, those are my questions.
5 and 2.
Mr. Upton?
Yeah, you said at one point vacancy was 12%, but you're using 5.4, is that,
Yeah,
did I hear
but,
that right?
yes, well, I'd asked the assessor that just on a read of the rent rolls. And I'm looking at the workup here, what we had done was, did a workup from the statement, because not all the spaces were empty for every part of the year.
Okay, so 5.4 is your number you use?
Yeah, 5.4.
Okay. That's good, thank you.
You'd agree that vacancy is not necessarily just a snapshot in time, though?
That's correct.
It'd be over a time period.
Right, and we have some familiarity with this property, and just randomly, here I've got from 2014, 4,700 square feet vacant, so that's a little over 5%. From 14. Got another one here. Uh, 16, no vacancy. And the next year, we have, there's 2 rent rolls in this thing. 3,000 plus. Okay, So the next year was 4%. We had 504 and then 12.
Okay, in any event, do you think that market?
Well, the market would have been 5.7 anyway.
Thank you.
I didn't even know the roof replacement was in there, you know? It's pretty good. Beating my mouth off all morning about roof replacements, and we come into one.
That'll bring us to the last property on our docket this morning, 77 Bacon. So when you're ready, Mr. Assessor?
File number 19271, the roll number is 060530800000, 77 Beijing Avenue. The assessed value is $3,902,000. There's 2 buildings on this property for a total of 10 premises. It is partially owner occupied. The actual year built's 1980, the effective year built's 1980, and the wall height's 22 feet. Masonry bearing walls is the construction class, and M2 is the zoning. The land area is 132,407 square feet, and the gross floor area is 57,060 square feet, and the leaseable area is 49,840 square feet for a land to plan of 2.66. So, turning to my page 8, I believe, we'll get a view of the property. It's in the St. Boniface Industrial Park. As you can see, there's 2 buildings here. I believe one of them is almost fully owner occupied and the other ones are rented out. You get another view on page 9. On page 9 you can see all the rental spaces, 96, 94, 92, 90, 88, 86, 84. So these are all the premises that are being rented out, and the building behind it is the one that the owner seems to use at 77. Turning to page 3, you can see the rent comparables. There are Marion, Debates, Beijing, Durand, Hoka, and Niagara. So most of them are right in the same Boniface industrial park. Some of them are outside, such as Hoka and Niagara. We'll go over the rental rates. They range from $5.25 all the way up to $6.50 a square foot, and the effective year builds are from 1974 all the way up to 1997, with wall heights ranging from 16 feet up to 26 feet, and the leased areas ranging from 2,275 square feet all the way up to 212 square feet to account for the owner-occupied portion of the building here. So looking on page 4, we have a blended rate of $5.46 a square foot. We're applying our 2.5 vacancy, or 2% expenses, and a 6.5% capitalization rate for an estimated value of $3,926,000. The 6.5% capitalization rate falls between the 20th and the 80th percentile on the capitalization rate chart. Turning to page 10, you can see the mailer. You can see they have checked off as partially owner occupied and net leases. Page 11 has the tenant roster. So we feel the value at $3,902,000 should be fair and equitable.
Did you address the difference between the 3902 and the 3926?
Is there a difference in the work up there? I have not addressed that. That's interesting. Oh. Let's see here.
But the 3,902,000 is what is in the roll?
That's what I'm going to check right now. Yeah, 3902 is the one that's being,
Okay, thank you. Mr. Grunfeld, questions?
So, given that page 4 and 5 Are these entirely from the model?
They'd be from the model, yeah.
And then, no changes then? You don't know how that,
I can't say how that's happened, no, how we're off by 20,000 or 24,000.
and yeah, I know you're off too, because our rent numbers are almost the same too. How does that happen?
I think we're lower than actuals, aren't we?
No, you're just a touch higher, but I'm just puzzled because we have a bunch of small units here, and these are the lowest rents you presented today. So how could size be an issue?
Well, it's also the type of building, it's a flex warehouse building, they tend to have a lower rent than a storage warehouse. It's a
Well,
1980 building, I believe this is the oldest building that we've looked at today,
Okay.
so,
Have you inspected this?
yeah.
The large unit, you know what goes on in there?
No.
Okay. You have a different parameter for a harsher service manufacturing building? Or are they always the same?
A harsher service, like a major, like
If
a
you got a
heavy
real
manufacturer.
Rough
like
usage building?
Sure, yeah,
And
yeah.
how do you characterize a rough usage building then? What do you do to make it come up like that?
Well, it's usually just we go by the zoning, whether it's M2, M3.
Oh, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's just a zoning-based thing? You don't
Yeah.
have a different way of inputting it for a selection of a different cap or anything of that sort? Okay, thank you. Some good questions.
Thank you. Mr. Upton?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
And I have nothing further. Mr. Newfield, when you're ready, we'll hear from you, please.
So, there's two buildings here. The one building up front on the street side is demised into a bunch of smaller buildings. They're all a small office up front, a little shop in the back. The larger building is one user, and it's an open building. I think the buildings are very similar in design. The open building is a welding shop. And we do have some, the pictures didn't come out too great. Page 8 and forward. It's a harsh usage. It's welding and there's curtains for spark control. But it's been beat up pretty badly, but that's its job. It's not there to look good. They weld stuff. And so I'm not gonna deal too much about the rents because we're virtually the same, but my reason for doing the low rent is the quality and condition of the building. The building was one of these that was designed to be two back-to-back bays. So if you, page 2, the overhead, you can see there's car parking on each side, and then down the middle is shared semi-trailer access. So they really have to go together. There would be no point in subdividing them unless you had cross easement access granted on either of them. That's the way it was built. So the back building onto the retention pond is the welding shop. We've applied market vacancy, and this vacancy was misquoted. Down below it says industrial 2.8, that's supposed to be 5.7. It's not Transcona, it's St. Boniface, which is 3.8. It was applied at 5.4. I'm not gonna make a change. My reason is that the inventory in St. Boniface is only 3 million square feet, whereas the overall city inventory is almost 30 million. So the statistical accuracy of a small sample size is called in question, and you have to generally default to the larger area unless there's a compelling reason not to, and that's what I was doing. So the 5.4 is pretty close to what you would normally have calculated out to be. Non-recoverables are a 5% estimate, I believe. You can see on page 3 that the actual rent roll does not list the the owner space, the one whole building. So it doesn't give us adequate information to calculate the non-recoverables. In this case, we would just apply 5%, which is a very small nominal charge. And we do know what roofs cost now, so our structural reserve is a good number. The shortfall, we can calculate that because we have the taxes, we're using the utility estimate, and the repair and maintenance. The costs are all provided here, it's just that there's no renting from one side. So we can use a rate of 620. So our NOI is 200,765. You know, anyone who hasn't seen this building might have a hard time saying, well, why is your cap so high? But been out there, it's not a good building. It's gonna require way too much work to change that usage in the back. It's a welding shop, as they used to say about the old '67 Chevy. It smokes, but it's old enough. So that's what this building is. Our value, $2,362,000. Last year's value was a verbal recommendation supplied by the assessor, and I ran it past the owner, and he said he'd live with it. Now, that was based on, I have our workup here. I believe we were using, sorry, I thought she, no, never mind. I thought I had a workup from her. I don't.
That's your presentation?
That's it.
I thank you. Mr. Lobenstein?
No questions.
Mr. Upton?
I don't think you have any questions either.
I just have the one question. You said that the non-recoverables, you defaulted to 5%?
Yes, I did.
Does that not work out to close to 9%?
Yes, it does. I don't know how they would have calculated non-recoverables, because this sheet wouldn't help me calculate a non-recoverable, we just don't know.
So you maybe have overstated that somewhat?
Yes, I can quickly calculate that, because I'd rather get it right than. I see that. So that's a difference of almost 11,000. That brings my NOI to 211,711. And capped at the same rate of 8.5 is 2,490,720, rounded to 2,491. And aside from slate portfolio, there are some very good, other good cap rates on page 38, which strongly support this. I would recommend looking at some of those to see what manufacturing buildings should have to.
Okay. Desire for a summation, Mr. Lobenstein, on either this property or all the ones we dealt with? Mr. Leopold?
Yes. The burden of proof is on the assessor. The factual information in the rebuttal indicates that the model cannot support the applied rates. Therefore, I think the board has a duty to look at what has been presented, for the factual evidence that we presented. That's the nature of the tax assessment business. I know some of the numbers we put on look extremely different from what was put on there. We had some very unusual situations, and it's difficult for me to bring these in and say to you, it should be this much lower, because it looks like we're just trying to make an argument. Hey, meet me in the middle or something, I can be safe on it. I'm not doing that. I'm just bringing you what they are. there's no such thing as every building being the same. They just vary. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I'll call the hearing to a close. The orders will come up in due course. Thank